process management, some document processing type capabilities that they knew if they brought an AI machine learning as well. And they thought
DKB Solutions et son partenaire américain Ss&C Blue Prism présentent leur solution RPA le 3 novembre 2022 à Azalaï Hotel à partir de 8h30. Le RPA désigne des robots spécifiquement conçus pour effectuer une ou plusieurs tâches réalisées dans un logiciel sans l'intervention d'un humain. Nous invitons toutes les entreprises nationales et sous-régionales à venir y participer.
Nous serons très ravis de vous recevoir. Merci de venir nombreux.
Infoline 07 07 84 46 95.
So the document Knowledge Business Solutions and the American partner Ss&C Blue Prism is on Kickstart 2023 to showcase their robotics process automation solution. It's a two-country event. The first one is happening in Accra on October 31, 9:30 a.m. at the Accra Marriott Hotel. Session 1 starts at 9:30 and we are looking at banking, financial services and insurance. Session 2 at 1 p.m. focusing on public sector telco service providers and energy and utilities. And the other event is happening on November 3 at the Azalai Hotel in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. Now you can call 0244378319 or email precious.a-pobby, Pobby spelled POBIH, at dkbsolutions.com. Now they invite every institution with an IT system in place or plans of an IT system to attend.
Technology, there's human beings, and there's digital workers. The role of the digital worker is not to replace the human. Absolutely not. And that's sometimes people wrongly assume that. That's not the case. What we're trying to do is to look, how do we use these assets that we have to the best of our ability to get work done? And it depends on what type of work you're doing. So if we're just doing, I don't know, let's think, boring work, like mundane, moving data from one system to another system, reconciling invoices and having to look across and match numbers on a spreadsheet. That is not the type of work that humans typically like to do. It's not creative, and actually humans can make mistakes doing that because it's easy for human error to creep in. So that is a type of thing that a digital worker is brilliant at. They'll do the same thing over and over again. They'll do it 10 times faster than a human, and they'll never make a mistake because they'll only do what they've been told to do. So that's a perfect case of that. A human, though, you want to elevate them to more, valuable conversations within the business. So using the humanistic behaviors, the things like, sensing, perceiving, empathy, in service, talking to people, in sales. That's where humans really can add significant value. So it's how do we bring together and connect digital workers with humans, with technology to really drive that forwards. The second, here we talk about transforming journeys, and I spoke on the previous slide about why people have not succeeded in the main with automation, and typically that's because they get bogged down in these early stages. Each one of these tasks, processes, operations, levels, as it goes higher and wider across the organization, offers more and more value. The more you can connect all of these layers together is where the value exists. Many just get stuck in task automation, and that's a robot helping an individual, a one-to-one relationship, helping you be more productive during the day in your job. But it doesn't expand to others, it's just you. There is value there, but it's limited. Then you start to move task into the process side. So then you've got a longer process and you're automating as much of that as possible, or bringing a human into the loop when required, if it's needed. That has another stage of value. But when you start to bring that together and then look at how you reimagine doing work at the operational level, that's the true area where you're going to get value. And that's connecting all of that together. And that's something that Blue Prism has done with some of its key clients, and it's something that hopefully will come through how we help you do that today. And the final one here is scale. Nothing works if it's not at scale. So again, stuck down into the world of task automation, there's no way of scaling that. It's just thousands of tasks that people are automating for individuals, but they're still there doing their jobs. It's not really changing the speed at which you deliver an outcome for the customer. It's only at scale level that the C-suite are really looking at. And across multiple different areas, not just efficiency or productivity, can be reputational, especially with banking and things like that, where you've got to be, you're in a regulated industry, and you have to be very accurate with what you're doing, have full audit trails. So you have to be able to do that with millions of customers. You have to have a solution that's able to do that at scale. And that's where Blue Prism really strongly plays, right from the beginning of where we come from. We were set up there from the start. And before I hand over to John, who's going to go into the portfolio in more detail, I wanted just to finish on this slide, which is, everybody looks to analysts and things like that for validation of vendors and things like that. Gartner Magic Quadrant is well known to everybody. Blue Prism has been in the Leaders Quadrant for the last 4 years in respect to that. And this year, the jump that Blue Prism made in that quadrant was more than any of the other leaders in that quadrant. And I would just say on that, though, that takes in, it's a catch-all. There's all sorts in there. You've got Microsoft in there is in there because of the sheer mass that they have, who automate tasks that's based around Microsoft and reports and things. And again, more on the task level. So that's not what we're about. We're enterprise. So in that space, there is not one provider that has the breadth of capacity, the portfolio and references of customers that have done this at scale. Nowhere near. And so, for just as a takeaway, Blue Prism is not for a small customer. It's a mid to enterprise scale. That's what we're good at. Okay. So thank you for. Hopefully that was helpful as a bit of a level set. For John, and now John will sort of expand out, the proposition into more detail. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks all, everyone, for attending. Some of these slides, actually, when we get into some of the meat of it, especially around banking and finance, are actually quite small. So you're going to strain a bit to see. So just to repeat, my name is John Bailey. I am not wearing a suit. Got jeans on. Because I'm a solutions consulting manager. So I do a lot of the consulting work around Blue Prism. For what I'm going to do before the break, I'm going to take you through Blue Prism and Ss&C to really explain the value proposition. And then after the break, you're going to hear from me again around financial services, and then you're going to hear from my colleague Kushil around insurance. And then we're going to wrap up for this morning's session. So let's start a little bit further. Just to expand on the themes that Greg was talking about, we talk about the ability that Ss&C and Blue Prism have together to unify the workforce. In other words, as Greg said, we're not trying to, with RPA, replace what humans do. Right? We are trying to augment what humans do. And that means that humans and their digital equivalents, so human workers and digital workers, that's the way that we kind of talk about these things, they can properly connect together to enhance what humans do in the first place, and then secondly, to make sure that work gets done in the most effective way. And we're going to explain what that actually means. And as the slide says, you should be using people wherever you should, but to automate whenever you can. And that kind of changes the mindset of how we think about work in any organization, any work. What we want is to have this mindset of think of automating maybe some of the dull stuff, maybe some of the repetitive stuff, maybe some of the stuff that just needs to be done accurately, and to free up humans to do what they do best, being empathetic, being sympathetic, communicating with customers, voice to voice, face to face. This is what humans can do really, really well. There's no way that a digital worker never going to do that. Even these days of fancy artificial intelligence, there's no way that these type of technologies can take over what humans do. So let's give humans back what they're really good at doing and take away the stuff that they shouldn't have been doing in the first place. And that makes us think of, working together as a team. We are all resources. Human workers are resources, and digital workers are resources on which we can actually get work done. We had this slide earlier as well, which talked about tasks and processes and operations. I'm going to try and expand on that a little bit more. Think of tasks as what individuals do to help themselves. Like, for example, I use Excel to help me do this piece of work, and sometimes I might go and create a macro that just repeats the keystrokes that I do in Excel. I don't know if you've done anything in Excel yourselves, but it's very straightforward. That's good for the individual, absolutely fantastic for the individual. And then when we start to go, okay, but why are you doing that? What is in your work? Yeah, that's because I'm involved in this team, and I need to do these sets of things with, let's say, an incoming piece of work. And I use Excel, and I maybe use a macro to help me do that. But at the same time, I'm also then reaching out to one system, reaching out to a second system, using Excel to do that with my macro, maybe then moving that data onto somewhere else. But putting all that together, I am involved in a process. And so we often find that when we go and talk to departments and then the teams within those departments and start to actually analyze the work that they do, we can very much see the processes of how people actually do that, rather than simply just focusing on how they use Excel. Then, when we take another look at it, what we actually find is that these processes are done throughout the departments, throughout the teams in the departments, and what they actually refer to is more about a journey. So an example could be, in the finance area, we often talk about things like order to cash, right? Or an order to cash. So this is when we receive, let's say, a sales order, and all of the processes that go on behind the scenes in front of the customer, to actually get to a point where we have got the cash received as a result of that sales order. So order to cash. If you think about that order to cash, that's a long journey. It doesn't happen immediately. It might happen over days, might happen over weeks, it might happen over months. Let's take another one, procure to pay. These are, again, all quite finance related, but you'll start to get the idea behind this. Another one, record to report. These are all really long journeys. Typically, by the way, all about a particular transaction that then moves through all of the different systems that are then required for that piece of work to actually be completed, from order to cash, from procure to pay, from record to report. Okay, that's all kind of like, let's call it low-level general and administration, I think the Americans call it, type stuff. Let's take that into why that company exists in the first place. The company doesn't exist in the first place just to manage finance departments. The company exists in the first place to manage some set of operations, to actually deliver a set of business outcomes. So, if we then start to think of the operations, these are also journeys. They may well be customer journeys. The journey that a customer takes to actually request a service and to have that service satisfied. Well, what sort of services are we thinking about? They could be in an insurance organization. They might be a onboarding or a sort of issuing of a quotation to actually successfully taking out a policy. Or, again, in insurance, starting a claim through the first notice of loss through to actually being satisfied with the payout on that claim or the repair to the car or whatever that happens to be. So those two insurance examples around operations. But think of, let's say, banking, because that's what we're going to talking about in this session, setting up an account opening. All of the things around maybe what we call know your customer, which is these days about money laundering as well. So all of these are journeys that are taken. And so what we really want to do is to focus on those journeys, remember how long they take, and actually the outcomes of those journeys. And that's really what we try and talk about when we talk about transform journeys. So the scale side is an interesting point as well, because we know that these are really large businesses that have these journeys, medium-sized businesses as well that have these journeys. And as a result, what we want to do is to put in, let's say, a set of resources that actually can match that demand to optimize those journeys, whilst at the same time making sure that you are being as productive as possible with your humans, but as productive as possible with your digital workers, with your RPA platform as well. There's really no point in spending loads of money on an RPA platform that doesn't deliver, let's say, a duty cycle or perhaps a better expression of a utilization just as much, or if not better, than a human, right? So if a human, when they go to work for their 8 hours, right, they go to work for 8 hours, maybe they have an hour's lunch break, so it's 7, maybe they go to the toilet a couple of times, have a coffee break, and so let's say they work for 6 hours out of 24. Well, what we want to do with our RPA platform is definitely deliver more than 6 hours in a 24-hour session, probably more like 18 to 20 hours, if not even more than that, to get to 100% utilization. So the performance of your platform is actually really important in order to maximize the investment that you make in these resources. You can't maximize what you get out of humans unless you pay them more, as in pay them overtime, or educate them more, and therefore anticipate that they're going to do more and more work. So being able to scale and be able to scale effectively for all of these different journeys that take place in an organization is absolutely where we need to be. Greg mentioned the 3 things of the systems that you have, the people that you have to work, and then the digital workers. Now, we used to say in Blue Prism, these 3 things need to be a third, a third, a third. So you spend as much effort, a third on your digital workers as you do on your human workers, as you do on your IT systems. Spend in terms of effort, that was, not necessarily spend in terms of money. These days, I think we recognize, and just for the example that I spoke about before, that we have to augment what humans do through the use of digital workers, so that there is always going to be the ability for digital workers to work alongside those humans and align with what they're doing. Okay, let's pull these things together and start getting a little bit more practical. We were acquired, about 6 months ago, by this company called Ss&C. And prior to that, Blue Prism were a pure play RPA vendor. So what that means is that we were focusing purely on what our RPA technology could do. And I'm going to show you all of the different aspects of what our RPA technology can do, because my heritage is 4 years in Blue Prism. But we were very much stuck into the mode of, you know, we've got a fantastic RPA product, and it's great that, that Gartner recognized that we're a leader, but we want to get better and better at that, and we wanted to go higher up that quadrant and further right in that quadrant, which we've managed to achieve with Ss&C. And I think it's partly because of the way that we were thinking about our RPA product. We were thinking about it from an automation point of view, not from this kind of concept of work and managing these journeys. So what you see on the screen here is we kind of feel as if our RPA product has transformed much more now into, first of all, an intelligent automation platform. So you're going to hear me talk about intelligent automation as opposed to RPA a lot more now, together with an operating model. Now, Kushil comes from an organization that has really properly implemented what we call the robotic operating model. Because as with any software, but most importantly with software like intelligent automation, you're going to change the way that people work. You're going to change the work that people do. Listen, guys, we're a software vendors. That's what we do. How can we really be people who have any credibility about how people change the work that they do? We don't. So what we do is, first of all, encapsulate all of the best practices that we ourselves know about, but actually also our partners know about. So we do a lot of work with many of the major system integrators. And as a result, we built this thing called the robotic operating model, which is a methodology to make sure that you get the maximum value you possibly can out of your intelligent automation platform. And coming together with Ss&C, rather than thinking about our platform, we started to think about what does it do, what does our platform and Ss&C capability do to our customers. So this is what it does to our customers. It creates journeys, it accelerates work, and it transforms experiences, and as we've seen already, it unifies some of those operations as well. So I'm going to go through these four and actually then start to dig into our platform, what actually makes these things happen. So creating journeys. I also like to use the word optimize journeys, because these journeys are created already in many organizations. You know, but to get the most out of RPA, to get the most out of intelligent automations, you know, firstly, you've got to spend time and money to really identify what your processes actually really are to be automated. Now, we didn't say that. That's IDC who said that. So an example of it is to create and to optimize, what you need to understand is what you do. We call that mining. So in the industry, you're going to find that there's two types of mining. And I don't mean mining as in bringing stuff out of the ground. I mean mining as in to discover the processes that you have and then to discover the tasks that you have. I'm going to explain a little bit more about process mining and task mining when we get onto the Blue Prism slide. But imagine that process mining is your ability to identify the journeys that are made. Then what you're going to do is to, once you've understood them, you're going to analyze them. And you're going to find where there are things like bottlenecks and deviations. And, you know, ping pong. Now, why is he talking about ping pong? When you see some of the results of process mining, you're going to be astounded by some of the things that you can see. So, for example, you see an incoming customer request, and it goes to one team, who then hand it off to another team, who then hand it back to the first team, who then hand it back to that same second team, who then do you get the idea here? This is ping pong. And do you know what? That customer request, nobody knows, because it's a different person dealing with it. Nobody knows that it's going backwards and forwards like a ping pong. Why would they know? Because you don't, unless maybe that same individual treats that exact same request, but in large teams, that's not going to happen. You know, especially teams across geographies as well, where we disperse works, yeah, that's just simply not going to happen. So, ping pong. So imagine then, you've discovered you've got ping pong. What are you going to do about that? This is the ability for us to then say, do you know what? Intelligent automation has the ability to solve that ping pong problem. Another idea, bottlenecks. Okay? Bottlenecks is where maybe one team is so overloaded that things just don't get done very quickly. So there we're tracking the length of time something actually takes. Nobody really knew. Everybody suspected that a team was kind of maybe underperforming or something like that. But hey, you know, these are clever people. They do their job. They're very conscientious. They always seem to be running with backlogs. But yeah, that's fine. You know, things happen. We do run with backlogs, etc. All right. So this is the point where we can start to say, using process mining, we can identify what those bottlenecks are and propose using intelligent automation to actually solve those backlogs. Okay, so then what actually starts to happen is you start to have a beginning of a list of candidates for automation. So then, what do? We then take a look at what individuals actually are doing in those teams. And we can actually capture what those are through task mining to start off with, or using a product that the subject matter expert can then tell us, well, this is the way it should be done. Yeah, we do it this way. And then, to then take that recording of the right way of doing it, and actually then using the RPA platform to mimic exactly the same thing with a automation, with a digital worker, if you want to use that expression, to a human worker. So the heart of what we're trying to do in RPA is this mimicking. We mimic what a human does. And by that I mean, we don't just mimic the systems that they go through. We mimic how they use the user interface. Right? So what user interfaces do we use? Well, I already mentioned a few of them. We use Excel. We sometimes use Word, Outlook. That's all on Microsoft Suite. Okay, but what else do we use? Well, in the CRM world, we might use things like, Salesforce. Or we might use Oracle Siebel. In the ERP world, we might use SAP. Maybe in the ticketing world, as in IT tickets, we might use ServiceNow. Think of another one. I can't. Anyway, so these are all the big systems that we use, and we use their user interface. Right, so what RPA does is it mimics using those user interfaces. Yes, granted, then if you want to, you can go down to the level of an API. You don't need to, because using that user interface is just like a human. You know, oh, I do this, I then do this, I then press this submit button. So that's all we need to mimic. Maybe then we need to start mimicking other things like, well, what decisions would humans make? They might make a, if then this, do this, if then this, do this. Yeah, sure. I mean, computers, programs are very used to doing that kind of stuff. Can we make it easy for a business user to be able to draw those things on a screen? Yes. Yes, we can do that. And typically what we find is when we start to describe these processes, if you've ever been through a kind of Lean or Six Sigma exercise, they look very much like the same result that a Lean Six Sigma person would do. They would normally use Visio to draw those processes. Do you know what? That's exactly the same look and feel of how you do things in Blue Prism. Then, something else that's quite important is when you develop with Blue Prism, you tend to want to be able to reuse things. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take, for example, SAP. When you use SAP, you're going to want to probably log in to SAP. Obvious, right? So I log into SAP. Now, how many processes do you think log into SAP? Well, maybe quite a few. You know, I've got my accounts payable processes, I've got some accounts receivable processes, I've got some sales auto intake processes, and they all need to have, you know, somebody log into SAP to start off. So, why don't we be really efficient about this, build one, we call it object, to log in to SAP. Great. So, then, SAP changed their login process. Do you know what? We update it in one place, and all of the hundreds and thousands maybe of processes that rely on logging into SAP actually then immediately corrected, if you like. So reusing of objects and even maybe workflows as well, sort of, you know, a combination of these objects all together might be something that would be quite useful. But how do you know? How do you know that you've got these objects? And this is where the robotic operating model begins to come in again and help you govern, firstly, how you build processes, secondly, how you build those objects, which objects to build, and other really important things like how do you manage security? I've just talked about logging into SAP. How do you manage security? Whose login do you use? Well, one of the rules in RPA is humans should never share their credentials with robots. Sorry, I said that word. That's the first time you heard me use the word robot, okay? And why that is because there's no audit trail. If a digital worker, a robot, shared the same credentials as a human, in all of the things that the log files that are created afterwards to go and investigate, you're not going to know who did what. And that's why it's really important to make sure that in RPA terms, you have your own credentials for what the RPA platform does. The other things that you can start to do, because it's a computer program, do you know, we can really start to easily reach out to other important things that are available to us. So, for example, when I'm making a decision, maybe I'm making a decision about a photo of a car that has just been damaged. Maybe the first thing I want to do is to verify the color. Maybe the second thing I want to do is verify the make. And maybe the third thing I want to do is take a look at the actual damage. And so all of this technology is not RPA technology. It's often some sort of cognitive service that is available. For example, Microsoft, Google have many different types of image processing cognitive services. And I don't just mean image. There's video, there's handwriting, there's all sorts of, like there's voice recognition, there's sentiment understanding, there's loads and loads of cognitive type stuff out there. Good thing about Blue Prism is that we can really connect to those cognitive services really easily. It's literally a drag and a drop into a Blue Prism process. And that is because we have packaged a lot of these cognitive services into what we call our digital exchange. If you like, it's our marketplace for where you're going to find connection between Blue Prism processes and these cognitive capabilities. So that means that a business person can now use these cognitive services without being an IT specialist, without doing any coding. I mean, I can use these things, and I have done. I'm no way near a coder. So let's just imagine that all the ability to use Blue Prism is about no code. But you can still build really complex models and complex decision-making using this type of technology. I'm going to go into this a little bit more when we look at some of the Blue Prism parts of this. So firstly, then, we've talked about create journeys. Creating these journeys, optimizing these journeys, well, who have we done it with? You're going to hear a little bit more from Kushil around the South African health insurer. I'm not going to read these, you guys can read. But some of the kind of interesting things that we know is using automation actually really reduces the amount of time that it would take to actually do something. What I mean by that is, if you were to go the traditional IT route, it would take a long time to actually build, let's say an API together with some code behind it, and then you're kind of stacked in the queue with all of the rest of the requests that IT have. Actually, by giving out to business users, to actually, when they're trained, to actually build these different processes, you're going to find that that time to get to value, if you want to call it that, time to value is really accelerated, massively accelerated. Actually, using some of these tools, we'll also find that when you connect them together, it will save you time as well. The talks on the bottom one here with Orica in Australia about the Blue Prism Capture product. So I'm going to show you how that all fits in a moment when we go into the Blue Prism portfolio. Second one, accelerate work. 75% of decision makers agree they need to change the way they work in order to achieve on their digital transformation goals. So it's a little bit interesting. We suddenly realized, or at least the word digital transformation has been knocking around now for a good, 8 or 9 years. And it seems to be the thing that everybody is saying, I need to hang my business transformation, my way of getting more out of my business by digital transformation. And so this is simply just an acknowledgement by Forrester that that's what they need to do. And how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to do that through automating tasks and processes. And this doesn't mean to be, by the way, I am going to copy what you do and automate what you do. I'm going to optimize rather than simply copy. That's important. But, if I'm doing a rubbish process and I automate it, I'm going to have a rubbish automation. Kind of obvious. So re-engineering where it makes sense actually is something that we often advocate. Then, rather than simply copying and re-engineering, what we can then do is to actually get more insight into this particular process, this particular operation, by accessing different bits of data. Now, this is going to be really important for things like, in banking terms, know your customer. Do you know this customer? And so I can reach out to external data sources to maybe find out more about this particular customer. Once I've found out a bit more about this customer, I might have a set of inputs that I could then throw into a decision-making engine that has been trained to give me a valuable output. Yes, you should take this customer on because of this data that I've looked at, and then because of the decision-making capability I have. Yes, they're a good customer. Why am I talking about customers? Why not talk about suppliers? It's the same thing. Why should I take on a good supplier or a supplier? I'm going to need to know my suppliers just as much as I need to know my customers. Where's the thing that's missing? It's your employee. I'm going to need to know my employees as well, especially the ones that I'm about to recruit, but maybe also the ones that I've got in my organization. Well, if you think about those three entities, suppliers, customers, employees, there you've got what a business is. Yeah, it takes something from your suppliers, using your employees to provide something to your customers. Those are the three bits that we actually make use of. And you know what? There's a load of paper. I've been in IT for a long time, way before I started losing my hair. And you know what? We have always talked about the paperless office. Do you remember that? The paperless office. Still talking about the paperless office. What we're talking about, though, is much more capable document processing capabilities. And by that, we really mean by using the most modern technologies, artificial intelligence, together with machine learning, together with handwriting capabilities, in order to properly read and to get some very high satisfaction rates out of document reading. And that's exactly what we can do with the Blue Prism platform. Here's 3 people that do it. Again, I'm not going to read these numbers out to you, but lots of numbers with M on the end, lots of high percentage numbers as well. And some of the people in your region as well. So, third one, transform experiences. This is kind of obvious, and everybody talks about customer experience. Customer experience is the most important thing, but it doesn't just happen by design. Right? So that's what we have to think about. We have to think about all of those different customer journeys. And we need to connect them end to end. We were just having a discussion earlier about taking out a loan and having to go backwards and forwards with different documents and making it really, really difficult. Oh, I just lost the first document. Well, it doesn't take much to think about, oh, well, maybe I should create a little microsite and have a solution that creates a little microsite for that particular customer and their transaction to upload all the right documents, and as they upload them, to then send them off to a cognitive capability to then say, right, as a result of this, I also need this document as well. Right? What you're then doing is you're focusing on the customer journey and actually starting to optimize what that experience actually looks like. Then think about it for somebody who maybe wants to have a telephone call. I mean, these days, who wants to call anybody? Contact centers are going down and down because the Generation X, well, even I don't want to necessarily talk to anybody. I want to receive the service on my phone, either by tweeting or by using a chatbot. Hopefully it's got a nice bit of cognitive and conversational capability behind it. These days that's getting better, but still not that great. But to actually get the service that I need, and maybe that's where I get my little URL that says, actually, this is what you need to do. You need to provide me with these bits of information over the next 3 days. Great. And then when maybe I've got an agent in a contact center where there are still contact centers, seeing the caller line identification come in, and then going off to pick up all of the different information about that customer before that agent actually answers the phone. So there's a 360 view of why that customer's calling. Could it well be because you've just sent them an invoice? Could it be that they just purchased a new product that actually needed some further details behind it? That's the kind of thing that we can start to do. And do you know what that does? It very quickly allows you to, first of all, to satisfy that customer rather than maybe in series. I've got to do this system. Oh, that's the CRM system. This system, that's the invoicing system. This system, that's the product information system. This system, and so forth. As an agent would do it in series, let's just do it in parallel. Yeah, because we've got multiple digital workers that can do this stuff. Not like a human, and not, by the way, not like our competitors would do it. They would just go one system after another. That's useless. Oftentimes, right at the start of the day, you call the contact center, they say our systems are running slow. But it's just the beginning of the day. Why are they running slow? They're not running slow. They've got 15 different systems to go through before they can actually take your telephone call. That's what's going on. Oh, Kashil, you're supposed to be joining a Teams call. So we've already talked about empowering workforces and innovating on demand. You know, here you can just understand really where I'm talking about really delivering the highest quality of service as quickly as possible. That's the kind of thing that we want to do in Transform Experiences. And let me see if I can move on. And who's doing it? Well, we've got these three customers: MMC, Bell, ATP. So I do actually have a bit of a contact center background. That middle one, 87% reduction in AHT, average handling time. I don't know if you guys do contact centers. AHT is the length of time that between essentially one call and another that an agent can take. Okay, that's called average handling time. Reducing it 87%? You've got to be kidding me. That's not possible. But it is if, first of all, you use your ACD, so that's your call distribution platform, automated call distribution, ACD, first of all, to collect as much information they can about the customer, right? So maybe that is, you know, you're pressing the buttons using the IVR system, right, to actually collect, first of all, why you're calling, which is typical these days. Sometimes they do it over voice biometrics as well, where we're actually identifying the customer. So ID and V, identification and verification, if you do that before the agent calls, and you can do that using, by the way, Blue Prism, and gathering all of the information from the caller ID and all of those 15 other systems and put it onto the screen immediately at the point where the call's transferred to that agent screen. Straight away, you haven't got that, you know, going through the different systems. So that's one thing. Secondly, mid-call, right? So now we're doing something with this customer, maybe something stupid like updating an address, updating a telephone number. Do you know what? That telephone number is going to be in 15 different systems. You know that. Yeah? That address is going to be in 15 different systems. And so by pressing one button, it could dispatch all of these, let's say, 15 different digital workers, robots, in parallel to actually go and do those updates, not in series. And I'm an electrical engineer, so series and parallel, that works for me. The Americans call it swarming. These, you know, you can imagine bees swarming around a piece of work. Well, yeah, that's nice to look at, but essentially, we're doing all of that work in parallel. And then, what typically happens at the end of a call is you have what call centers call after-call work, or we call it wrap in the industry, wrap. And that's typically where you've taken all of the stuff that you've talked about with the customer, and then you write it back to CRM. You know, why did that customer call? You don't need to do that because the whole session has been completely understood by the solution, and actually then can write all of that work to CRM for you. So there's no wrap. So suddenly, you're taking a call, which was really quite long, to something. So that's where you're getting your 87%. It's amazing. Last one, unify operations. So, when we start to think of Ss&C and Blue Prism, we start to think of looking more holistically at work. And this is where we want to, first of all, monitor end-to-end, not what end-to-end our digital workers do, our RPA program does, our intelligent automation does. We want to do it for everything, for all work, and we need to monitor that, whoever is doing that work. Then, what we're going to need to do is to orchestrate it. So, this is like, there's two parts to this. There's the first, which says, so Ss&C have a business process management tool, a BPM tool. Now, what BPM tool does is it allows you to describe how a piece of work flows through the organization. In other words, it describes those journeys. And those journeys may well be human journeys, but they could equally be robotic journeys. Right? So a BPM organization whether or not it's our own organization or another one, you know, Pega, Tibco, I don't know, Appian, all these kind of BPM organizations, what they're doing is describing the way your work flows through their organization. RPA gives us the ability to do some of that with automated resources that need to be trained, that need to be built to do that automation. But then we also have humans doing work as well. So BPM gives us kind of like this idea of being able to orchestrate all of the work and then be able to make decisions as to, well, who's going to do this work? Because it might not be the right decision to always give work to humans, to robots. Why? Well, let's take, for example, who built that automation in the first place? The subject matter expert built that automation in the first place. Okay. We then perfectly create the Blue Prism process that subject matter expert did. We then throw all of the work into that automation, and it works brilliantly. It saves us massive amount of hours. Well, that's another thing we'll come on to. It saves us hours, and it works perfectly. And it's been working for a year. It's been working for 2 years, and it breaks. The subject matter expert is no longer the subject matter expert because they haven't been doing that subject, and therefore they're not an expert for 2 years. So all that value you built just got destroyed. So maybe there is a case that says orchestrating work needs to think about how best to manage what humans do and what automations do, or digital workers, or robots, whatever you want to call them. Not only with the work that we see now, in other words, all the work that's just arrived on Monday morning or whatever, but maybe also we need to start to use some prediction algorithms to forecast what work might happen, and as a result, you know, are we going to hit our service levels? Are we going to hit what we anticipate in terms of those customer journeys, those order-to-cash journeys, those procure-to-pay journeys? Are we going to hit those if we have this work arriving? Or what if we had this type of work arriving? What if a boat got stuck in a canal that then changes things? We need to think of the different scenarios that might actually happen. So we might want to use simulations to actually see what the results might be. What if we changed the work around a bit? And so this kind of idea, so I'm not talking here about anything to do with RPA. I'm just talking about RPA gives us these extra set of resources, which is exactly what you should think about them as. But actually, when you start to unify operations, you start to say, let's make this idea of being able to orchestrate work irrespective of who does that. And who's doing this? Well, here's the name that Ss&C gave to this product line. It was called Chorus BPM. And these two American companies, IFDS and Anzavar, actually use Chorus BPM to do this kind of stuff as well. Now, let's be very clear. Ss&C and Blue Prism have only just joined together. We've come out with this as our value proposition to our customers, as I was actually saying. Our software has not been unified yet. Yeah? Well, yeah, when PeopleSoft and Oracle came together, it took a long time before the two products really properly started to merge together. So it's going to take some time, but this is the direction that it's absolutely heading in. So what I'm going to do, because I'm almost out, in fact, we started a little bit late, so I'm just going to go on for a bit here, is to show you, first of all, some of the names of the Blue Prism and the Chorus product line in those 4 areas. So in Create, Accelerate, Transform, and Unify, we've got the Process Assessment Tool, Intelligence, Capture, ALM, and then we've got Decipher, Document Automation, Desktop Decision. In Transform, we've got UX Builder, Interact, and Service Assist. And in Unify, we've got BPM, and then repeat of Process Intelligence. Now, I'm going to go through these a little bit more in the kind of how do we think of things internally. We think of them internally around these 3 areas of discover. We know that's where we're going with the optimize and the build journeys, of so discover and then design and then deliver. Those are the three areas. So looking at those colors, where do they actually fit? So this is another version of that first slide where discover, we have Blue Prism Process Intelligence. As I mentioned, this has both process mining capabilities, in other words, call that customer journey understanding. You know, let's get visibility of journeys, whether they're customer journeys, orders to cash journeys. Task mining, slightly different, because that's about understanding how a computer is used in the 8 hours that user is using it. We use exactly the same user interface to do the analysis, to do things like the bottleneck analysis, to do maybe things like ping pong analysis, which you can do with humans. Oh, it keeps going backwards and forwards, doing this and this with the same, that's wrong. You know, so we can use exactly the same analysis techniques for us to be able to say, actually, you know, that's not the best way of doing it. The best way may well be for the subject matter expert to use capture. Now, you've seen that word already, Blue Prism Capture, to actually describe that process. You'll notice the arrow between process intelligence and capture. That arrow is telling you that between task mining and capture, you can output task mining data to capture. So I've already said capture is your subject matter expert kind of little recording tool. Now task mining is your, I've got 100 people that their actions are being recorded. I've got 200, I've got 1,000 people. So if you like, you've got the aggregate of what everybody does. And you can compare that and contrast that with what the subject matter expert says is right. So you've got both options there. That then moves into the design studio. This is classic Blue Prism, the design studio itself. And it's within there, oh, by the way, that arrow is an interesting arrow because firstly, it outputs what we call a process definition document, a key document from the robotic operating model you see surrounding the whole of this. It's a key governance document within the framework that says you need to describe what these processes are in this PDD, in this process design document. Do you know what? Capture creates that automatically. And people are saying to us that that saves them 50% of the time to create these PDDs. And what's in there are things like the screen captures, the obfuscated passwords, things like the keyboard presses, the mouse movements, the submit buttons, all of that kind of stuff, all of the applications that were actually used. And also, another output of capture is what we call the skeleton. The skeleton that is in the design studio that can then allow a developer to then start the development. And as I say, the development is a Visio type development. That's what we're talking about. We're talking no code, absolutely no code, but Visio. That then, when you have done the normal kind of process that people do in software, which is to follow through the software development lifecycle, SDLC. In other words, you build something in dev, you then move it to test, you test it, you then move it to prod, you then put it into production, you then run it, right? So that's the normal software development cycle. That's exactly what we describe in the robotic operating model, and we take you through that. It's then running in the control room, right? So there, once it's running, do you know what? You're going to go back to your process intelligence to say, now I've actually automated something, has it made an improvement? Are we seeing an improvement to these journeys? And that's exactly what you'll be able to see, especially if the people logging in, or the login that's used, for example, into SAP, happens to be not a human's login, but a robot's login or a digital worker's login. So you can actually see who did all that work. So you can then see what the improvement is side by side in both task mining and process mining and task mining if you need to, but most likely in process mining. And obviously then we've got business process management over the top of that. A couple of other interesting things. Blue Prism has a web capability, we call it Hub, and that sort of sits there underneath, allowing you to plug in different new bits into Blue Prism. One of that is what we call Interact, and that is where a human, any human with a web page can actually interact with a platform. Because normally speaking, you'd either interact by using a process, a design studio or a control room, but now anybody can. By filling out a real simple form, I want to launch this process. I want to provide these input parameters. I want to upload a file and have that actually processed by the platform. The platform also then has Decipher. I mentioned it already. It's our intelligent document processing capabilities, which means that we can, using AI and machine learning, first of all, understand what documents were being sent, and secondly, extract the right data from those documents. Right? So that's what Decipher IDP does. With Chorus, they have an additional capability around what they call document automation. That's great at reading handwriting as well. So we don't normally do that with Decipher. A couple of others before we finish. Service Assist is our contact center capability. It's what we talked about earlier about having little microsites, even micro URLs that you're on your phone. I'm sending you this URL now. Can you actually take a picture of your ID, please? And whilst we're talking, all right, I've got that now, thank you. Just imagine what that does to customer journeys. We also have a little decision capability, so making decisions that aren't black box decisions, they are simply decisions that you've taught them in the first place. So you teach the decision capability, how to make a decision, it then gives you that decision when you actually ask it. And then we also run on the desktop as well for some circumstances where the centralized pool of resources that we would normally run can't be used because of some sort of like security problem, for example, like a smart card that needs to be in the system the whole time, and you can't replicate that with our centralized resources. I'm going to stop here because I've got two sets of use cases, but these are going to be repeated. Certainly the insurance one is going to be repeated in the second session. So I'm going to stop it there, and I realize that I'm 15 minutes over, but let's go and have a bit of a break for how long, Kushil? 20 minutes? Yeah. Okay. Where's that?
I'll grab it now. Yeah. Hi, guys. So thanks, John. I just want to make it a bit real, bring the whole platform together. It's going to just be a quick 10, 15-minute video. I know it's the thing that stands between us and refreshments. So just, John, thank you for giving us the platform, sharing the context and explaining where we've come from. We have a little bit of a slot later to talk and dive deeper into banking, financial services, and insurance. But just to maybe bring it to life a bit, I just wanted to kind of show you the entire platform overview. Hopefully there's audio.
Rachel runs a contact center for her company and has chosen to use Blue Prism digital workers to improve efficiency and performance. Blue Prism digital workers can do anything a human worker can do on a computer, often using the same user interfaces. They're also faster, never take a break or get sick, never sleep, never make a mistake, keep perfect audit logs, and are highly secure. That said, Rachel's contact center is quite large, so how do we know where to start? What work should the digital workers be doing in the first place? This is where Blue Prism Process Intelligence enters the field. System log data can be loaded and transformed as needed with ease through the Extract, Transform, and Load tool or through pre-built connectors. The no-code interface makes it fully accessible and easy to use, and once the data is ingested, it is automatically organized as a process model that can be immediately visualized and analyzed. Color coding makes it easy to identify bottlenecks. In this example, Rachel can see that the billing review is taking significant amounts of time. By switching the line of thickness to represent the time length of events, we can clearly see that the billing review is a bottleneck, which can be further investigated in the bottleneck tool. Here we can see that the billing review takes over 30% of the total time. Rachel's team can then simulate improving the bottleneck from the previous view and predict how many hours back to the business this would yield. We can also look at a frequency distribution of the paths taken to complete a given process. In this example, the straightforward happy path occurs most often, but the second most common path takes significantly longer, as does a few others. Perhaps this is due to repeating the billing review or perhaps it has to do with the agent answering the call. To understand why, we can set those paths as a filter and drill down. The breakdown tool lets Rachel's team easily analyze events. In this case, we want to identify which agent is assigned to these longer calls, and we can quickly see that most are handled by Alex. We can also see that other agents don't take as long. With no coding and just a few clicks, we've gone from ingestion of the data to discovery. But why is Alex taking a longer route? Maybe he doesn't know the right method, and some targeted enablement could have a large return. Or perhaps Alex excels and is assigned to the more difficult calls? Either way, we now know we want to set up a task mining recorder on his machine to learn more. To get the full picture and better understand automation opportunities, we need to be able to visualize and analyze some manual steps a user does on their computer that don't generate data or logs. This is referred to as task mining, and it provides the granular detail required to build out automations. When doing these recordings, it's critical to protect user privacy. Templates allow us to define when to record, what applications to either include or exclude, what should be obfuscated, and what text should be masked. In this example, we're setting up a recorder for Alex as well as some of the other agents to look at specifically just the applications they're using to do these processes. As Alex does his work, shown here sped up, the actions he takes are logged. By deploying recorders on many agents' desktops and recording for several days, Rachel's team can identify details they would otherwise miss if only recording a single agent or doing interviews. With the data from the recordings, we can apply deep analytics. By graphing the potential gain against the complexity, for example, we can quickly determine the best candidates for automation. We can also identify projects we probably should avoid automating, at least right away. In this case, we can see that in addition to the billing service, which is relatively uncomplicated, we can get a high gain from automating the address change process as well. And since Blue Prism Process Intelligence deploys multiple recorders on various users' desktops, Rachel can capture a representative sample of how different people do tasks. This means that we don't see just one happy path, but every path, including exception paths, resulting in automations that are much more resilient. Once we've selected the paths we want to include, we simply click the Export to Blue Prism button. Blue Prism Process Intelligence combines process mining and task mining to give the high-level view of a business process, as well as the granular details required to easily select and automate it. Next, we can import it into Blue Prism Capture, where we can optimize it for a digital workforce. For example, when Alex needs to change an address in 5 systems, he does it in one system at a time. Instead of doing each one sequentially the way a human would, 5 digital workers working in parallel could complete the task 5 times faster. Blue Prism Capture also includes additional recording functionality. This way, Rachel's team can consult a subject matter expert and make adjustments to the process as needed. Once ready, we can export it into the Blue Prism Design Studio as a skeleton, saving roughly 30% of the development time. In addition to optimizing the process for a digital worker and speeding up development, Blue Prism Capture also exports documentation that's used to help maintain proper governance. In order to finalize the automations, Rachel works with their company's Blue Prism Center of Excellence, who then import the release into the Design Studio. Blue Prism automations are broken up into 2 categories: processes, which contain the business logic, or what the digital worker is doing, and objects, which contain the application-level logic, or how the digital worker does it. Here we see the skeleton we imported from Blue Prism Capture. The no-code flowchart-based interface is designed to be easy to use, looking similar to Microsoft Visio so business users can learn it quickly. When the business logic needs to interact with an application, such as the CRM system, it calls the object for that application. These objects are fully reusable, which means that once they're built, you can quickly build out more processes that use the same applications by just connecting the dots, if you will. In order to build out the objects, you first need to tell Blue Prism how to identify the individual elements of the application that you want to interact with. To look up an account number, for example, we need to identify the Locate button so the digital worker can press it. To do this, we simply open the application modeler, create a new element, and click Identify. Notice that as I move my mouse over the application, the different elements are outlined. After selecting the one I want, I can double check that it worked by clicking Highlight. Notice that the Locate button is again outlined. Since Blue Prism identifies elements based on the underlying code, as opposed to screen scraping, minor changes to the application or differences in screen resolution won't cause any issues. With the elements identified, it's time to use the flowchart to describe the action. First, I'll drag in a write stage to enter the account number, and then a navigate stage to press the Locate button. Opening the write stage, I simply tell it to enter the account number, encrypted as a password for security, into the search bar element. Opening the navigate stage, I similarly drag in the Locate button element and select Press as the action. Now all I have to do is link the pieces together, and we're ready to try this out. As we step through the object, we can see the corresponding actions being taken in the CRM. While this does work, we want to make it even more resilient before putting it into production. By following the best practice templates, we get something that looks like this. The main section in the middle remains the same, entering the value and then clicking Locate. But before we do that, we want to do some verification. First, we make sure that Blue Prism is attached to the correct application. Alex and other agents work with many different applications, so we need to be sure that the digital worker is looking at the right one. Next, we make sure the search bar is actually there. Digital workers can move through the application very quickly, so it's important to give them time to load before progressing. Otherwise, we could end up trying to click a button that doesn't exist yet. Unlike traditional recorder-based automations, which simply pause for the amount of time in the recording, Blue Prism will wait until the element is there and then immediately move on. This way we go as quickly as possible while still being highly resilient. If the element isn't detected after a set amount of time, Blue Prism will gracefully handle it instead of crashing, often restarting the application to try again. Finally, once we've completed the task, Blue Prism will use the intelligent wait again to confirm. In this case, we wait until the customer data loads. This way, we know if the action failed, so we can rectify it. All of these best practices, and many more regarding everything from how to set up a COE to proper documentation for your automations, are included in the Blue Prism Robotic Operating Model, or ROM. Blue Prism has been helping customers for over 20 years, and has codified that experience into the ROM to make sure customers like Rachel are successful. Blue Prism's no-code design studio makes it easy to build scalable, resilient automations, all while remaining compliant and highly secure. With the back-end processes now automated, we need to set up a user interface for Alex and the other call center agents to use. Since Blue Prism Service Assist lets the COE set this up entirely from within the Blue Prism Design Studio, they can use the tool they already know to build a UI quickly and without any coding. Here you see the UI on the left, with the BP process that controls it running on the right in debug mode for visibility. Pre-built objects are called to control different elements on the UI, and the included PS hours help make sure it's set up quickly and easily. Now when Alex has a call come in, digital workers are automatically triggered to pull the appropriate information as quickly as possible so we can greet the customer by name and personify the conversation. The customer 360-degree view shows all of the information Alex needs in a single pane of glass at his fingertips, saving him and other agents time previously spent navigating through multiple systems. And with the ability to have multiple digital workers swarm a task, working in parallel as mentioned earlier, average handle time can be improved dramatically. For example, one customer had Service Assist kick off up to 26 digital workers at a time, resulting in average handle time going from 9 minutes to just 2 minutes. All of the actions to be taken are available as simple tabs along the top of the screen, saving time by removing the need to work through different screens while the customer is on the line. Service Assist also has the ability to easily guide agents through more complex processes like loan applications and a step-by-step wizard-like approach, which will remove errors and ensure consistent, streamlined processes with quicker resolutions. Not only will this make your customers happier, but it also reduces the amount of training required for new agents. Finally, Blue Prism Service Assist can easily send confirmations to the customer through email or text before digital workers take on the post-call work, freeing Alex up to take the next call. Service Assist improves both the average handle time and the agent experience by combining digital worker swarming with a simplified user interface. In order to further streamline agent training, Rachel wants to have AI help predict the next best actions for them to take. Using Blue Prism Decision, her team can quickly set up and train a machine learning model. When creating the machine learning model, Rachel's SME Rob first gives it a name and a basic description to make it easier to find later on. Rob then defines what the outcome will look like, choosing between numerical or categorical. In this case, Rob chooses categorical, specifically whether or not to offer a new credit card. The ability to add custom values as well here yields tremendous versatility. Next, the variables are defined. Rob can add as many as he needs, but in this case he only needs 4. If the model proves inaccurate, Blue Prism Decision allows him to easily add more variables and retrain it later on. After he confirms, the model is built and ready to be trained. If certain variable values always result in a certain outcome, they can easily be set as a rule using the no-code interface. For example, if they've been a customer for under a year, they won't get a new card offer. The last thing we need before we can teach the model is just one example for each outcome. In this case, Rob sets 1 for yes and 1 for no. Now it's time for Rachel's SMEs, like Alex, to teach the model. Blue Prism Decision proposes various examples, and Alex chooses yes or no and creates samples. This is repeated just 20 times to give accurate results. After that, the roles are reversed to calibrate the model. Alex changes to variable values to see what answer Blue Prism Decision gives, correcting them as needed. The data points used to make each decision are shown below, since having an audit trail for how each decision is made is crucial for compliance. With compliance in mind, all the samples used to create and train the model can be viewed and the individual weightings can be changed, although most often that isn't required. And just like that, our machine learning model is ready to go. Back in the Blue Prism Design Studio, Rachel's Center of Excellence can now call the machine learning model the same way they would use any other Blue Prism object. The speed and ease of use for setting up custom ML models in Blue Prism Decision allows Rachel to quickly set up complex decisions, significantly reducing the amount of training her new agents required, just as hoped. If Rachel's team would rather use a different solution, Blue Prism also integrates with many best-of-breed artificial intelligence and machine learning partners through its extensive Technology Alliance Partner program. With the automated solution now in production, we can use Blue Prism Process Intelligence again to examine the outcomes. Here we can see that the automation has taken the bottleneck from earlier from about 9 minutes down to only 2, resulting in massive average handle time reductions. In order to monitor both the digital workers and the larger processes they're a part of, Rachel can use Blue Prism Process Intelligence's behavior queries. Process queries can be defined graphically without any coding or scripting, democratizing their use. Similarly, we can use the forecast tool to set up custom machine learning models to predict outcomes before they happen. Custom alerts can be triggered by these queries and forecasts, and can even directly trigger Blue Prism digital workers. This means that digital workers can dynamically be added to jobs to make sure SLAs are hit. In just a short amount of time, and without any coding, Rachel's project is up and running. Using Blue Prism Process Intelligence, her team quickly identified what processes should be automated, and the integration with Blue Prism Capture cut the development time by 30%. Best practices in the robotic operating model ensured her automations would be highly resilient and secure, while also reusable and scalable. Blue Prism Service Assist then drastically reduced average handle time by having digital workers swarm any task for agents, all while cutting training time by giving them a single pane of glass to view all necessary data and Blue Prism Decision to predict next best actions. Finally, the monitoring and predictive capabilities of Blue Prism Process Intelligence not only ensure that SLAs and compliance regulations are met, but also provide the metrics she needs, such as average handle time going from 9 minutes to 4 minutes, and the cost being cut in half. Talk to your Blue Prism rep to find out what you can achieve with the combined power of the Blue Prism Intelligent Automation Platform.
Hello? Great. So I think that ties everything that John was kind of piecing together for us in a real practical video of how the whole platform works together. We're going to take a little break. I'm not sure if there are any questions before we do break for, I guess, 20 minutes. There are some refreshments outside, and we'll start the next session, let's call it, by 12 o'clock, where we'll dive deeper into banking, financial services, and insurance. But if you do have any questions, please shout. If not, there are refreshments outside.
Dkb Solutions et son partenaire américain Ss&C Blue Prism présentent leur solution RPA le 3 novembre 2022 à Azalaï Hotel à partir de 8h30. Le RPA désigne des robots spécifiquement conçus pour effectuer une ou plusieurs tâches réalisées dans un logiciel sans l'intervention d'un humain. Nous invitons toutes les entreprises nationales et sous-régionales à venir y participer.
Nous serons très ravis de vous recevoir. Merci de venir nombreux.
Infoline 07 07 84 46 95.
So the document Knowledge Business Solutions and the American partner Ss&C Blue Prism present Kickstart 2023 to showcase their robotics process automation solution. It's a two-country event. The first one is happening in Accra on October 31, 9:30 a.m. at the Accra Marriott Hotel. Session 1 starts at 9:30 and we are looking at banking, financial services and insurance. Session 2 at 1 p.m. focusing on public sector telco service providers and energy and utilities. And the other event is happening on November 3 at the Azalai Hotel in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. Now you can call 0244378319 or email precious.a-pobi, Pobi spelled POBIH, at dkbsolutions.com. Now they invite every institution with an IT system in place or plans of an IT system to attend.
Dkb Solutions et son partenaire américain Ss&C Blue Prism présentent leur solution RPA le 3 novembre 2022 à Azalaï Hotel à partir de 8h30. Le RPA désigne des robots spécifiquement conçus pour effectuer une ou plusieurs tâches réalisées dans un logiciel sans l'intervention d'un humain. Nous invitons toutes les entreprises nationales et sous-régionales à venir y participer.
Nous serons très ravis de vous recevoir. Merci de venir nombreux.
Infoline 07 07 84 46 95.
The American partner Ss&C Blue Prism present Kickstart 2023 to showcase their robotics process automation solution. It's a two-country event. The first one is happening in Accra on October 31, 9:30 a.m. at the Accra Marriott Hotel. Session 1 starts at 9:30 and we are looking at banking, financial services and insurance. Session 2 at 1 p.m. focusing on public sector telco service providers and energy and utilities. And the other event is happening on November 3 at the Azalai Hotel in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. Now you can call 0244378319 or email precious.a-pobi, Pobi spelled POBIH, at dkbsolutions.com. Now they invite every institution with an IT system in place or plans of an IT system to attend.
Dkb Solutions et son partenaire américain Ss&C Blue Prism présentent leur solution RPA le 3 novembre 2022 à Azalaï Hotel à partir de 8h30. Le RPA désigne des robots spécifiquement conçus pour effectuer une ou plusieurs tâches réalisées dans un logiciel sans l'intervention d'un humain. Nous invitons toutes les entreprises nationales et sous-régionales à venir y participer.
Nous serons très ravis de vous recevoir. Merci de venir nombreux.
Infoline 07 07 84 46 95.
So the document Knowledge Business Solutions and the American partner Ss&C Blue Prism present Kickstart 2023 to showcase their robotics process automation solution. It's a two-country event. The first one is happening in Accra on October 31, 9:30 a.m. at the Accra Marriott Hotel. Session 1 starts at 9:30 and we are looking at banking, financial services and insurance. Session 2 at 1 p.m. focusing on public sector telco service providers and energy and utilities. And the other event is happening on November 3 at the 4378319 or email precious.a-pobi, Pobi spelled POBIH, at dkbsolutions.com. Now they invite every institution with an IT system in place or plans of an IT system to attend.
Dkb Solutions et son partenaire américain Ss&C Blue Prism présentent leur solution RPA le 3 novembre 2022 à Azalaï Hotel à partir de 8h30. Le RPA désigne des robots spécifiquement conçus pour effectuer une ou plusieurs tâches réalisées dans un logiciel sans l'intervention d'un humain. Nous invitons toutes les entreprises nationales et sous-régionales à venir y participer.
Nous serons très ravis de vous recevoir. Merci de venir nombreux.
Infoline 07 07 84 46 95.
Forgiveness beyond worry. So the document Knowledge Business Solutions and the American partner Ss&C Blue Prism is on Kickstart 2023 to showcase their robotics process automation solution. It's a two-country event. The first one is happening in Accra on October 31, 9:30 a.m. at the Accra Marriott Hotel. Session 1 starts at 9:30 and we are looking at banking, financial services and insurance. Session 2 at 1 p.m. focusing on public sector telco service providers and energy and utilities. And the other event is happening on November 3 at the Azalai Hotel in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. Now you can call 0244378319 or email precious.a-pobi, Pobi spelled Pobih, at dkbsolutions.com. Now they invite every institution with an IT system in place or plans of an IT system to attend.
Dkb Solutions et son partenaire américain Ss&C Blue Prism présentent leur solution RPA le 3 novembre 2022 à Azalaï Hotel à partir de 8h30. Le RPA désigne des robots spécifiquement conçus pour effectuer une ou plusieurs tâches réalisées dans un logiciel sans l'intervention d'un humain. Nous invitons toutes les entreprises nationales et sous-régionales à venir y participer.
Nous serons très ravis de vous recevoir. Merci de venir nombreux.
Infoline 07 07 84 46 95.
Forgiveness beyond worry. So the document Knowledge Business Solutions and the American partner Ss&C Blue Prism is on Kickstart 2023 to showcase their robotics process automation solution. It's a two-country event. The first one is happening in Accra on October 31, 9:30 a.m. at the Accra Marriott Hotel. Session 1 starts at 9:30 and we are looking at banking, financial services and insurance. Session 2 at 1 p.m. focusing on public sector telco.
Today, work means doing many different tasks, reading emails, creating spreadsheets, and even using that irreplaceable 20-year-old program. It's a lot of work, and not all of it uses the skills that make us, well, human, like creativity, critical thinking, and communication. So why not automate those repetitive tasks and focus instead on the high-value, great work we're meant to do? At Blue Prism, we're making automation smarter through the use of our digital workforce. That means you don't need to change the systems you're already using or worry about integrating with the new program IT recently adopted. A Blue Prism digital workforce can handle it all. In building automations, that's easy. There's no coding required. As a business user, you just drag, drop, and build flowcharts. The best part? It's all centrally managed, so your business teams can seamlessly collaborate, share automations, and build on each other's work. And the digital workers can help each other out when they see that their virtual colleagues are busy on other tasks. And IT can be sure it's governed, safe, secure, and ready to scale. Each side of the operation focusing on what they do best. Let's look at a simple example. Every business needs to fulfill customer orders. With Blue Prism, this task, including all the clicks, logins, and decisions, can be completely automated and in turn, transformed. Digital workers can read the incoming orders, use your internal inventory system, check in with human teammates if needed, and of course, use SAP to finalize the order, Salesforce to update customer information, and Outlook to send order confirmation emails. Teaming up with a digital workforce that can handle these tasks puts you on the fastest path to value and gives your people back the time they need to do what only they can. Deliver outstanding customer service, build relationships, be creative, and tap into the best practices to grow the business. The world's largest organizations choose Blue Prism so they can explore new possibilities and do more great work. What will you automate?
Running a business isn't easy, but with automation, it can be made much simpler. With Blue Prism, intelligent automation is just a click away for your entire organization. As the operating system for business, Blue Prism is transforming the way you work, seamlessly mixing human and digital workers and freeing people from mundane tasks. From recording workflows and generating process definition documents with Blue Prism Capture to discovering new automated opportunities that weren't previously thought possible. You can put the power of automation into the hands of your people with no technical experience required. Blue Prism's digital workers harness leading AI and machine learning technologies using optical character recognition and NLP to process complex, unstructured information. And with Blue Prism Digital Exchange, you can even drag and drop pre-built automations to save your workforce hundreds of thousands of hours in just a few clicks. Business leaders can then monitor the entire process from a central command center, scheduling, resourcing, and even reimagining ways of operating. All of this for just one single license cost. Deployed on-premise, software as a service, or in the cloud of your choice, giving you the greatest possible return on your automation investment.
Know your customer, also known as KYC, is the mandatory process of verifying the identity of customers and clients. With regulation constantly changing, banking and financial service enterprises must expand their KYC workforce and often lengthen the onboarding process for new clients. This makes KYC a costly program, one that 10% of the largest financial institutions spend over $100 million a year on. That is until now. Blue Prism's connected RPA digital workforce is streamlining the KYC process, empowering compliance teams, and delivering immediate value to the customer. How is this accomplished? client documents are scanned and sent to Blue Prism's digital workforce. The digital worker uses intelligent skills such as optical character recognition and natural language processing to read and classify each document and extract the necessary information. Analyzing the data, the Blue Prism digital worker will ensure that all information is valid and, if necessary, alert banking staff to missing or incomplete information. The entire process is logged, and the information is organized and stored to be compliant with KYC, as well as anti-money laundering and GDPR regulations. This is high-value work that frees banking staff from manual entry and ensures continuous, up-to-date, enterprise-wide compliance standards are followed. But Blue Prism goes beyond just delivering cost savings across the business. It accelerates enterprise-wide innovation. Blue Prism's Connected RPA is empowering the internal entrepreneurs, the in-house change makers, to use new technologies in innovative ways, like tailored financial products, intelligent contract reading, and responsive chatbot services. This is the Connected Entrepreneur Enterprise. Across all industries, the digital workforce is digitizing physical information from any form and any language into organized, usable data. Business teams are connecting that data and machine learning technology to drive innovation and stay ahead of the competition, far into the future. Welcome to Blue Prism's Connected RPA, intelligent automation done right.
Imagine that you call into a contact center and you have an amazing customer experience. You're able to provide the information to the IVR. The agent is able to easily see that information and has all the information at her fingertips to quickly resolve that issue. So that's what we're going to show you today. Using the Service Assist 360-degree view, John Smith is going to call into that IVR with an inquiry around a bill. You're going to see the information that he provides flow directly to the agent desktop. That agent is going to have one view with all the information that she needs to quickly resolve the issue. So the first thing you're going to see is John calling into the IVR. Now, this is a simulator, but it can be any IVR solution, whether it's Avaya, Genesis, or any other solution that the customer prefers. Blue Prism Service Assist is able to work with that. So the first thing he's going to do is provide his phone number. So what's going to happen is in the background, the IVR is going to go out and find that information or connect with the CTI to do that. The next thing that is going to happen is that he's going to be presented with a menu of options. He will go in and put in his information and select the billing inquiry. As soon as he hits the pound sign, our digital workers are going to be automatically triggered and start finding information. So John presses the pound sign and you can see our digital workforce is out running, finding the information. If you look here on the left, you're going to see where it says 4 of 8, 8 of 8. So what is happening is our digital workers are swarming. They're running in parallel, hitting all of the systems and the business processes that are needed to resolve John's inquiry. Let me orient you to what you're seeing here. This is the user experience that's provided as part of the Service Assist user interface. However, we can work with any Agent Unified desktop of choice, whether it's Salesforce, ServiceNow, AWS Connect, or even a homegrown solution. So an agent's able to go into their agent desktop in a seamless experience and access the information and the business processes that they need to resolve the request. Across the top, you're able to see the tabs and the business process and functions that our agent has access to. Just like any other solution out there, it is a role-based solution with security embedded to make sure that our agent can only access the business processes and the information that she needs to. Across the left, you're able to see all the tasks that the agent needs to resolve, including the one that just came in. So let's click on that. What you see here is a dynamic form that was delivered to her based on the information needed to resolve this request. If this were a loan approval or life insurance claim or some other request, different information would have been brought in with different access. In addition, as we look down the screen, we're able to see not only information around their details, but things like product, insurance policies, and even that customer history. All of this is information that in the past, the agent would have had to go into multiple systems or might not have even had access at all to be able to resolve this request. In addition, you're able to see things like offers. So if this is a revenue center, the information that our agent is needed to do some upsell and cross-sell is provided. So notice immediately our agent is provided with the information that John needs. There's a suspicious payment, and she's able to go and provide some information. Now, a couple things that are also happening here. Not only is it bringing in information, our agent is able to interact with that entire journey. So if there's other information that needs to be brought in, so for example, if our agent needs to see some more details in order to resolve that, she simply clicks on that button and our digital workers are running in the background to find that additional information, which you see up here. In addition, it's not just kind of that inbound information in that 360-degree view. She also has the ability to go and change information, and our digital workforce will then go and update the information in those external systems. So 360-degree view, interactive, with all the information that she needs to complete that inquiry quickly, as well as the ability to interact across the entire journey. And something else to keep in mind is that it doesn't matter, this might have come in through the IVR, but whether it's coming in through the IVR or through chat or through just another channel, it's going to be a consistent view with consistent access to the information along the way. So when we walked through this, you're able to see that our agent was very quickly able to resolve John's inquiry, tell him that there was a problem with the bill. You saw all of that data flow coming across all of the channels, whether it was IVR or other, and reaching out to those external systems using our swarming capability. And overall, it was a great customer experience for John. And then for our agent, she was able to focus on John. She was able to focus on him, give him the information, and upsell and cross-sell where needed. Manual repetitive tasks, her having to swivel chair and going and finding information in multiple places was now eliminated, which ultimately is going to lead to a lower handle time and faster call resolution. And ultimately, if you look across all of the customer journey and all of the customer journeys our agent interacts with, it's going to reduce that cost to serve and cost to sell and drive a really great value to both the customer and the agent.
Businesses need a way to automate repetitive tasks where employees must be at their desk and use their own credentials. With Blue Prism Desktop, customers can create attended automations where human interaction is always required. Tasks must be initiated by a human worker, and where automations use applications that can only be used on a specific user's desktop with their specific logins. Business users are empowered to do just that through a simple user interface which is easy to use with no upskilling and minimum training needed. Desktop enables users to run processes where speed and accuracy are vital and where customer sensitive data is handled, such as onboarding a new employee, mortgage, or loan applications. Such processes often involve multi-factor authentication. Desktop allows all of this from the user's computer using their own secure credentials. This demonstration shows how Desktop will look to the end user, focusing on the intuitive, easy-to-use interface and the simple user experience they will have. Although a desktop process can request input from the user on multiple occasions while being run, this demonstration shows a simple process to onboard a new employee to an HR system. This enables us to demonstrate the core desktop functionality available to the end user in version 1. Please note that for demo purposes, some of the recording has been slowed down so that the interactions with the systems can be seen clearly. This is not an indication of the real process speed, which is quicker in real time. As the user opens Desktop, they will see a list of folders which contain processes. These are the processes which they can run and which they have been granted specific access to. This access can be set to be as granular as the automation team COE team wishes using Blue Prism Enterprise multi-teams environment. Desktop users can run an automation process as and when they need to. The desktop user cannot edit or delete any of the processes they have access to. They can only run those processes. The processes are arranged in folders, again designed by the automation team. Here you can see there are 5 example folders containing processes. The user will click on a folder, here clicking on the folder named BPD. This will open the folder and show any processes the folder contains. Here you will see that there are 3 processes within the selected folder. If the user wishes to return to the list of folders at any time, they can do this by clicking on the Library tab. To select a process to run, they will again open the folder and then select the required process, which in this case is the Onboard New User process. This process has been designed to onboard a new employee onto an HR system and to request the desktop user to add information into the fields within a simple form. The fields and information requested is all determined at process design time. When the information has been added, the user will click on Run. The demo has been slowed down so that you can see the interaction with the back-end HR system. For this demo, we are showing an example of a process being run by the logged-in desktop user for the very first time. The process has been designed to first check if the application login credentials are already available in the Windows Credential Manager. If not, the process will ask the user to enter their individual credentials for the HR system. Once the user has entered these, the process will store the credentials locally and continue to run. However, the next time the process runs, the user will not need to enter them again. Instead, the process will use the credentials from the user's personal credential store. You now see those credentials being used by the process to log into the HR system and the new employee details being added according to the information input earlier. In this example, the process has been designed to display the information back to the desktop user. After reviewing the information, the user clicks Submit and a success message is displayed. Earlier, you saw the desktop user adding their individual credentials to the HR system. Here, we will run the same process again. Now the process will run and take those credentials stored locally and seamlessly log into the HR system. Another new employee will be added and the process will not ask for any credentials. Processes can be designed with required validation, so here is an example of a process to offboard an employee from the same HR system. The required process is selected and the information of the employee who is leaving will be added. Here you will see that an employee where the information provided is not found in the system. In this example, the national insurance number entered is not recognized as valid, so a message is displayed, unable to find user with the provided information, followed by a message to confirm that the process has not been completed. The desktop user can click on View Issues to see further details. Here you can see that the process didn't run successfully as the national insurance number entered could not be found. Returning to the process library, we will now look at the History tab. Here you can see the session history of the processes which have been completed and those which have not been completed. To view more details, click on View Parameters to see the information that was entered into the form, or View Issues to see further details. Back to the process library, and we will now look at credentials. This user currently has one credential stored in desktop, the credential for the HR system you saw earlier. Please note that after this was entered into desktop, it was also automatically added to the desktop user's own local Windows Credential Manager. The desktop user can also add a new credential in desktop manually, as you see here. The user now has 2 credentials stored for use in desktop. Finally, we will now look at Windows Credential Manager for the logged-in user. The new credential, which has just been added via desktop, is now shown. Blue Prism Desktop delivers centralized control, security, scalability, and auditability. The ability to provide attendant automation while allowing our customers to retain control of their automations.
Today I'd like to take you through Blue Prism Process Intelligence and how it fits into the Blue Prism platform as a whole. We believe there are three core areas within a process's lifecycle for automation where mining has a significant benefit: process discovery, process design, and process monitoring. We'll start with discovery. Blue Prism Process Intelligence first uses process mining to provide a high-level view of your business processes. The first challenge to getting visibility into your processes is getting the data from all the relevant data sources. Often this is pulled directly from the system logs, but sometimes this involves experts using an ETL tool to transform the data as needed for analysis. Blue Prism Process Intelligence has these transformation capabilities built in an easy-to-use graphical form, which saves time and money by eliminating the need for an external tool and the experts to use it. Unlike a data warehouse or traditional BI tool, once the data is ingested, it is automatically organized as a process model that can be visualized and analyzed. Here we see the process flow across all components in a distributed application. The diagram is annotated with metrics of how many use cases, or instances, follow each path and how long each step takes, allowing us to drill down into the bottlenecks. Many other tools are provided to answer additional questions, such as which steps are taking the longest or cost the most, or to find the root cause of delays, which helps identify automation opportunities. Process queries, or behaviors, can be defined graphically without any coding or scripting, democratizing their use. In this example behavior, we're looking for cases where a rental car was issued, no coverage confirmation had been done before that, the claim was denied, and it took more than 4 days before the rental was returned. While this might seem very specific, these behaviors can be used as filters, allowing you to analyze just the cases of interest. To get the full picture and better understand automation opportunities, we also need to be able to visualize and analyze the manual steps a user does on their computer that don't generate data or logs. This is referred to as task mining, and it provides the granular detail required to build out automations and PDDs. Here we see the recording surface that manages the recordings and generated log files. Blue Prism Process Intelligence deploys multiple recorders on various users' desktops so we can capture a representative sample of how different people do tasks. This means that we don't just see one happy path, but every path, including exception paths, resulting in automations that are much more resilient. In task mining, protecting user privacy is critical. Templates allow us to define when to record, what to record, and what content should be hidden to protect user data privacy. Users can also have the option to pause recording. Once user activities are recorded into log files, Blue Prism Process Intelligence provides tools to automatically find the significant tasks in the low-level clicking and typing events, separating out unrelated events such as multitasking. Users can also manually define tasks by looking at logs with screenshots and designating start and end steps. Once tasks are cut from log files, you're shown what tasks are defined, along with metrics such as how many times each task was done, how much time is spent on each, and a measure of the complexity that helps identify how hard each task will be to automate. The chart at the bottom displays each task, showing the potential time savings and the complexity of each to help make it clear which are the best candidates for automation. You can also use the Blue Prism Process Assessment tool to help here. When you discover a task that you want to automate, you can then go to a display that shows all of the ways this task can be accomplished. You then just select the ones you'd like to use for building out your automation, and click the Export Blue Prism button in the top right. Now that we've discovered the process we want to automate, we can move on to the design phase. We can use the JSON file we just exported from Blue Prism Process Intelligence to generate a skeleton of that automation within the Blue Prism Studio. This will reduce our automation build time by up to 30%. Okay, but how do we actually get that into the Blue Prism platform itself? Once you're in Blue Prism Capture, click Open, Open File, and select the JSON file you just exported from Blue Prism Process Intelligence. We can then open that and bring it into the main platform. And you'll be able to see all those pieces in here. Now this is going to save a ton of time for your developers by having that PDD digitized. Whenever you have recording agents installed on users' desktops, privacy and compliance are obviously going to be major concerns. And as was mentioned earlier, this is taken care of. So when I open this up and you see the screenshot, you'll notice that this is entirely blurred. This is to make sure you keep your compliance. You'll notice that even though this is blurred, the exact location that a user needs to click is highlighted. In fact, if I was to add an additional step, I could highlight that as well to make sure that all the granular details are very easy for a reviewer to see and understand. This is to make sure that we're saving the time of any SMEs that are reviewing this content. The real power that comes from process intelligence comes from the ability to look at many different recordings and put them all together to find all the different paths. Now, we know that the way a digital worker does something and the way a human worker does something shouldn't always be the same. Obviously, they work in different ways, so we're going to want to make some adjustments. Once we bring these models of what the people are doing into Capture, we can look at the entire process end to end and be able to easily optimize it for a digital worker to use. Once your process is optimized and ready, it's time to move it on to the next stage of the Blue Prism platform. To do that, you're going to click Export in the top right, fill out some basic information, select Blue Prism Release, and hit Export. This is going to give you that unparalleled speed to value. If we take option A, as discussed earlier, we can easily import this release into the Blue Prism Studio. All we have to do is select that file and hit import, and we'll see it pop up. If we open this, you can see that even very complex solutions can be brought into the studio with relative ease. This can save up to 30% of your development time, drastically speeding up how quickly you can get automations into production. You could also take option B and get to the studio through Automation Lifecycle Management.
So first of all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the room. How many of you guys do banking? No. Oh, okay, good. Insurance? Ah, excellent. So there's going to be something for all of us. Good, excellent. So the way I'm going to do this is, well, you already have heard from us. We're a software vendor. What do we know about banking? Okay, so our founders did actually work for their first clients were Barclays, so clearly there's some knowledge there. So rather than tell you about how you might use intelligent automation in banking and financial services, I'm not going to do it. IDC are going to do it. All right, so what I'm going to do is to go through some of the things that IDC tell us as Blue Prism, Ss&C Blue Prism, that we need to tell you to focus on. Okay? So I'm going to do finance, and Kashir's going to do is going to do insurance. So this slide, which is why I asked you to come up to the table, is IDC's view. It's trying to represent all of the different functions that you have in a banking business. You know, you've got some vertical functions: deposit taking, customer management, advisory, payments, etc. And you've got some horizontal functions: treasury, HR, data management as well. Now, I'm going to say, in my heart of hearts, I think intelligent automation belongs in all of these areas. So you go, oh, thanks, John. But even, right? So this is the difficulty. That there is so much that we do. Where do we start? And so this is the real sort of idea behind asking companies like IDC to help us out. First of all, they coded those. They said, right, here is some of the complexities that you have. All right, so obviously the orange, the yellow, and the green. This is where the complexities are. Now, I'm going to tell you that because we have a software system, do you know what? We love complexity. Complexity is, we just, you know, that we have that for lunch. That's what we do. But the next thing they actually said is, well, what are the different business drivers that we see in the market today? And so these have not really fundamentally changed, but with COVID, they have really been amplified. And the need for, let's say, the second one in digital resiliency and cost savings, you know, they've always been there. But cost savings, you know, well, certainly risk and security and compliance has always been there as well. Let's face it, you know, risk and security are basically the primary value propositions of banks. You know, that's about trust, isn't it? However, obviously, we've seen quite a few scandals in recent years, and has destroyed a lot of trust as well. So with these strategic priorities, what you're going to see is how, with intelligent automation, we can begin to address those. Another one is the need for you know, customer-centric innovation, and you know, it really has been the case that financial services sector has come under massive pressure in the last 10 years to shift its focus away from itself and direct that towards the customers themselves. And then in open banking and partner ecosystems, they've kind of entered this hype cycle thing that goes on, and especially over the last 3 to 5 years, and it's caught a lot of imagination in the industry. But whilst building out sort of interbank ecosystems, what we see with open banking, there's going to be a lot more of a priority to think wider than simply just banks themselves, and shift towards, you know, being partners. So we'll talk about that as well. So let's now take us into each one of this. Let's start with cost efficiency. Now, clearly, you know, everything around cost is you know, important to banks. I mean, let's face it, something like in UK banks, it costs for every pound that the British bank makes, they spend 77 pence making that pound. So there's a lot to do with cost efficiency. Now, they did IDC did a survey, and 81% of banking organizations said that cost and efficiency was one of the most important, the second most important thing that will impact their business in the future. And you know, it's been kind of high hopes that digital transformation would actually reduce cost, but you know, that really hasn't happened in the kind of scale that banks have really wanted. And we learned from COVID recovery that you know, getting the ROI of some of the initiatives that organizations needed to focus on in the early stages is still where they're stuck. You know, banks are stuck there. You know, and we've been in Blue Prism involved in a number of these different sort of cost efficiency projects, but typically they're quite small projects. They're not thinking of things in an enterprise context. They're not thinking about those journeys. So this is why the focus for cost efficiency really needs to now move towards smart digital workforces, and to really understand some of those high complexity business processes that are highlighted by IDC. And RPA is absolutely a standout candidate to help with those specific type of challenges around digitization, rule-based processing, monitoring, visibility, and so forth. But so cost efficiency isn't necessarily just about an internal measure either. You know, treasurers, for example, in an organization, they're looking for advice on how to optimize their cash and liquidity, okay? And you know, it opens up major opportunities when you do start to optimize those things for bank to expand their services portfolio as well. So automation has and will have some great success to deliver services at scale in these areas, and you're going to see why. So on cost and efficiency, the kind of areas that you might want to be looking at are those that are, in your cost and efficiency programs. So many of them in deposit taking, some in customer management, some across the treasury and finance area as well. Right? So when it comes to cost efficiency, we've got a greater amount of opportunity using Blue Prism and our intelligent automation. For example, focusing on our return on investment, ROI. Oftentimes a little bit of automation gives you a small amount of ROI. That's task-based. But what we're really trying to do is expand that out and make that an enterprise way. In other words, affecting areas of remote working, reduce cost to serve, and improve customer experience. And we also find that digitizing workflow. We talked about end-to-end customer journeys. That's essentially workflow, isn't it? And optimizing that workflow is really going to deliver tremendous results. Where do we use that? Well, we use that in loan origination, customer onboarding, account opening. And we also just talked about liquidity and cash services as well. So to move on to who's done this, a UK bank at the start of COVID actually recognizing that people were actually going to ask for mortgage holidays because they were put under the furlough scheme. It actually took the IT department 2 days, or the COE 2 days, to build some automated processes that allowed 500,000 mortgages to be processed to have a mortgage holiday. And as a result, what that's done is it's prevented a large number of those people who were on furlough to not go in arrears. So we talk about automation's got to deliver return on investment by cutting an amount of hours. Well, how about cutting the amount of bad debt? That's a much better measure, preventing bad debt, than simply returning hours to the business. So let's look at the second one, digital and operational resiliency. Now, this is a bit of a strange one, but we hear that digital resiliency is now one of those buzzwords that people are talking about. And it came really into light when we had lockdown. It has to be said that the banking sector was quite, let's say, was quite prepared for something like the pandemic because it's got business continuity and disaster recovery and these kind of things. But what it was not so prepared for was essentially having a digital front office and a not so digital back office, right? Because that was a lot more. So this kind of concept of data resiliency, digital resiliency, then kind of starts to make you think, how can we mitigate risks from things like IT outages, fraud, and cybercrime, given that we have now exposed our systems in a much broader context out there. So the way that actually works is that it can serve as, data resiliency can serve as a sort of door opener for Blue Prism to facilitate transformation programs, bringing together, well, the classic, isn't it? The people, the process, and the technology, right? So that's really where we can actually really start to add value. And then another example is, especially now in Europe, if you ask bankers about cloud, they go, oh God, I don't want to put my customers' data on the cloud. But more and more banks are going to cloud, especially in Europe. And it does seem, by the way, that AWS is the flavor that they're actually going with. I think in probably 10 years' time, nobody's going to necessarily opt for on-prem. Why have a data center with, all of these masses of computers spinning around doing, and then all of those sort of DR that you need as part of that, hardware. We're going to consume pretty much everything in the cloud. The data resiliency in the cloud is going to therefore be a focus. And that's where actually Blue Prism can really come in and really help. So once again, let's look at where the macro processes for operational and data resiliency come in, and you'll see that in loads of areas, and especially obviously the one that's at the bottom, the data management, that's all around about data, right? So where we can definitely help out are things like we can make sure that the data that appears in one place actually matches up with data that appears elsewhere, making sure that that data is as quality as possible. Because after all, you don't want your systems to have rubbish data in, because rubbish data in means rubbish data out. We all know that. So where do we find these opportunities? Well, in monitoring detections, that's what I just mentioned there, monitoring your data, making sure that your data is not corrupted by systems outages or any other downtime. Maybe then taking some of those complexities and actually taking away that complexity by automating it is something that we can do. And data cleanliness and quality. We were talking to a French bank in Bordeaux week before last, and they were talking about the data quality of their scans. And they were scanning, not using us by the way, they were scanning their paper documentation, and they were getting 80% exceptions. So only 20% was going straight through. That's just madness. Why are you employing a technology that only gives you 20% of good stuff, whereas it's giving you 80% of bad stuff? That's a completely wrong way around. Using our technologies, that's where we can actually, and especially around the way that we use artificial intelligence and machine learning, that improves that data quality. Now, that's just on documents. Think of what else, where else we might actually be able to use that technology. Maybe in the way that you populate either your old-style data warehouse or your new-style data lake, I think that's what we call them. Just imagine getting the right level of quality in that data. That's the challenge. And where it's been done before, here with Nordea up in the Nordics, where they have been able to demonstrate compliance at scale using these increased efficiency as well. So Nordea are one of our better clients, using something like 450 different processes within their organization, so making use of that scale that we actually talked about earlier. Let's go and take a look at the third area, risk, security, and compliance. Well, this has obviously been one of those things that have really happened since the COVID. Imagine that you didn't just have everybody at home exposing your platform to sort of an increasing surface for attack. You had all of the hackers at home as well. What were they doing? Well, they were building up ways of hacking stuff. That's what they were doing. Right, so as a result, you've got almost like a perfect storm. Now, here you can see with this IDC survey, automation is an absolute essential sort of way of being able to address some of these compliance and priorities, for example. At least 8 of these that's in the list are heavily dependent on automation to actually be to be effective. I mean, after all, what we can do is we can look at, for example, things like the cryptographic Trojan, but things like attacks have increasingly affected from phishing attacks, fake apps, Trojans, backdoors, crypto miners, botnets, ransomware, VMware, carbon black. Just the list goes on. This is where you can use automation to really start to help identify that it's happening and actually mitigate the effects of it actually happening. So, risk and security compliance has taken up more than 15% of total IT spending, and that is an increasing amount. So if you're not paying for 15% for your defense, then you need to be, and you need to start to increase it. And the other thing is, the industry's really changed from the so-called perimeter defense to assuming that the perimeters have actually already been breached. And so the new focus isn't on that so much as it's on the continuous identification of threats and monitoring of transactions themselves. So, you know, when we talk about KYC, know your customer, probably you do that on an account opening. So yeah, I know my customer. You might do it every year, might do a KYC every year. But do you know the transactions that are going through? Do you know if they are always good? So the balance has to move away from KYC, well, to include KYT as well. Know your transaction. Don't just know your customer, know your transaction. And that's, again, where the provenance of that transaction can be automated in terms of trying to find out where it's come from. Once again, if we go back to the macro processes from our original slide, you'll notice that obviously security, risk, and compliance comes in heavily on that horizontal scale there, but also in things like lending, in customer management, and deposit taking as well. And that is where Blue Prism's intelligent automation platform can actually come in as well. So these are the kind of areas that you might want to explore with Blue Prism around, you know, relief, security, compliance teams, you know, secure apps, auditability, and so forth. And to prove who does it, here we have a local bank meeting, you know, the compliance deadline with ease using Blue Prism and its intelligent portfolio. So there we show, you know, something like, I talked about exceptions, 600 out of 24,000 exceptions. that's better than you know, 2080, let alone, you know, what I was talking about 80/20 before. Right, we roll on to number 4, and that is customer-centric innovation. Now, you know, obviously, customer-centric innovation has always been around things like personalization and contextualization. So when you think about it, you know, you can't just send a general mailing program out to people to think that they're going to become customers or to make those customers, you know, buy more from you. You know, you have to be properly specific. Now, properly specific means that you need to have data about those customers, then you need to make decisions on what you do with that data, and then you need to start to actually action some of those decisions. Right? So what we find with Blue Prism is that it enables all of this type of technology, personalized sales, gamifications, you know, as well as obviously mitigating against frauds and so forth. So this is the kind of technology that actually allows you to do these things. Remember what we said earlier, is that you don't need a programmer to be able to do this. You have your own operations people who have got the capabilities of actually building these solutions, which means that you're building new solutions. Maybe you're building new business lines as well. You'll notice then with customer centricity here, we're talking about, you know, obviously all of the customer channels there on the right-hand side, but obviously where the customer themselves get connected into your business. And which are the channels? Now here's an interesting one, because when surveyed, which channels do you use to increase customer engagement? And, you know, this is the weird thing. I would have thought that we'd have learned from the retailers in the banking community, but we don't. You know, with retail, everything is on your app. Everything you'd want to be able to do, whether that is buying at home and getting a home delivery, or buying at home, continuing that on your mobile, continuing that on the web, then going into store, continuing on that in the store. You know, you're doing a shopping list, and then you're picking up your goods in the store, or you're picking your goods in the store, or you're picking up your goods in the store. You know, that whole omni-channel capability is something that banks absolutely need to learn from, because, you know, people don't use phones anymore. People don't use traditional contact centers anymore. They do, but only some older people, let's say, and those people who feel like their needs are more complex than can be actually satisfied by, let's say, an automated process. And so that's why we need to connect with things like social media messaging, self-service on an app, self-service maybe in parts of your website and stuff like that. That's where we've got an opportunity in automation terms to deliver excellent customer service. And on this survey result here, you can see that there are some unsolved challenges for customer experience, and we can start to actually address some of those, especially around collecting customer consent. Now, Consent management is going to be one of the real interesting things going forward. You know, we've seen it, haven't we, with Apple changing the way that you consent to allowing apps to actually communicate. Right? So that's one example. Now apply that to a banking context. You know, the collecting and managing consent is going to be one of those big areas that needs to be managed, and automation allows you to actually do that. So, where are the opportunities? Well, obviously, you know, in these new automated channels, that's kind of obvious, yes. So we can connect to social media, we can connect to apps, and so forth. But this whole kind of idea of personalization, you know, identifying what the customer needs and actually being able to deliver on that. And here's the interesting 3 words: moment of truth. When you can deliver on that moment of truth, you've got a customer, and you've got a customer advocate for life. Then obviously, you know, we're going to talk about integration, as we always do in RPA terms as well. Other things like consent acquisition and management. That's what I was going back to earlier. You know, that's the kind of thing that we can begin to really do. FSI rules are saying that has to be tightened, and that's the opportunity we actually have, as well as obviously the omni-channel transformation that I spoke about. And who's doing this with Blue Prism? You've got MMC here in the US, who are able to rapidly you know, onboard customers with 100% accuracy. That's amazing, 100% accuracy. And therefore, if you've got 100% accuracy, you're going to have really satisfied customers, which is, after all, what we're trying to achieve with customer-centric innovation. Last but not least, we have connected ecosystems. Now, this whole idea of open banking as a connected ecosystem has been around a little bit a while. I didn't really understand it myself until I saw a little thing on my app that said, oh, do you want to connect to your other bank accounts that are not with me as a supplier? I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. You know, so I can have a single view. Remember this Customer 360, myself having a personal view of all of my different bits of money that I've got all over the place, pensions around the place, you know, loans here and mortgages here and so forth. Great, I can get a single view in one pane of glass, irrespective of which provider I've got. That's actually quite an interesting proposition. And, you know, moving forward, yeah, clearly there were standards that needed to be put in place for that to actually happen. But let's take it a little bit further than that, because once we've actually got data about me as a customer, we can then, as a bank, start to monetize that data. We can start to think, where can we use this data? Which partners can we go and work with in order to actually, well, I wouldn't say sell this data, but develop, let's say, new products based on what this data actually reveals to us. So think of, for example, just improving like liquidity outcomes and you know, bond insurance products and individual lending and so forth. You know, just that when you start to say it in those terms and be able to kind of turn it around so that a treasury becomes a customer's treasury, and then the signals that we get from that can then really affect the liquidity within our own bank, right? So it's like saying, look, I'm going to invent new business lines based on what I can actually, what I've first of all have optimized using Blue Prism, and then secondly, what I can actually offer from that business line within my own business back out to the customer. You know, and Treasury is exactly one of those, especially to high net worth individuals and businesses, of course. So if we were to look at the this data monetization is coming one of the sort of real interesting areas. More than that, you know, by using a solution that offers itself as a service, you could start to offer anything as a service. So you'll see this thing called XaaS, right? So imagine, and this is actually happening in telco businesses, so this afternoon, if you're here, you're going to hear this one again. But imagine that you set up a platform to provide an accounts payable service using your own accounts payable system, but just a little slice of it down the bottom. As a bank, you've just offered a brand new service of something you never used to do, but you're actually interested in the cash in the first place, so long as the customer carries on with you. But offering accounts payable as a service or anything as a service, go wild with it, because that's the way it goes. So, and here you can sort of see these are the three areas that banks will now become. They'll become a platform layer. They are already a trusted advisor with money, but they'll also then enhance their capabilities around being a product provider, not just a product of banking services, but a product of many other types of services as well. Where that comes in is here, as you can see, a lot around data management, around connected ecosystems, but also some of these new customer channels and advisory channels as well. So the opportunities for Blue Prism here is streamlined operations and optimized executions, using data to unlock insights, and the ability to deliver at scale using anything as a service. KYC as a service, yeah, why not? If you do KYC, why don't you offer that KYC to other people out there? Know your customer because I know that customer. Who's doing this? A British bank automated the fraud handling, customers' time, and limiting customer risk. Here you can see some of the metrics, 18,200 hours returned to the business with 0 risk in there as well. So a quick summary before I move over to Kushil. This is quite an important slide because it summarizes some of those key processes for value creation in using intelligent automation in those areas of cost, efficiency, digital operational resiliency, risk, customer innovation, and connected ecosystems. So if you want to know where to start, right there is the answer. Who's doing it? These are one or some of our banking clients. 40% of Blue Prism's clients are banking clients. So you can see our heavy focus there. There are one or two larger names missing from that list because they don't like us to use their logos publicly. Okay, so that's where we've seen IDC come up with the business priorities in banking, and how we've seen then how Blue Prism can actually address some of those areas with intelligent automation, and the future of those banking organizations is really going to rely on that. Now, Kushil, can I offer the floor to you? How are we doing for time? Okay, cool. That's not so bad. Yeah.
Thanks, John. Hi guys. So I've chatted to some of you in the break. Just a reminder, I'm Kushil Amritlal. I'm an Alliance Director looking after Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I think it's worthwhile giving some context to my background because it kind of builds a little bit of credibility in what we've been talking about the whole day. So I've been a previous customer of Blue Prism, of the core product, of the platform, of all its product offerings. I essentially worked for a very large insurer based out in South Africa, a Pan-African insurer that covers 14 geographies. It is all mutual if you guys are trying to figure that out. And back in 2018, essentially started their automation capability. I am not a ComSci graduate. I don't have an IT background. I'm actually an engineer. And essentially what we did back then was use non-IT folk to create this capability. We created it within business, so it was wholly owned by the business, underpinned by IT, which was a very different way of thinking about how to implement solutions. And over the past 4 years, up until 2020, I guess 2022, mid-2022, when I did move over to Blue Prism, we scaled our digital workforce from 0 to 351 digital workers. Now, why that's important is because this whole morning we spoke about operating models. We spoke about, this is about labor. This is about, how do we use technology to create a connected ecosystem given the constraints of our legacy platforms? And that's exactly what we did at Old Mutual. We augmented human capacity with digital labor. We forced the IT teams to think differently about delivering solutions, because here we are, this team in business that is now starting to drive IT solutions, right? And the fact that it's a low-code, very easy-to-use platform allowed me and the team to deploy solutions very quickly, to challenge the way of conventional solution delivery and how demand and supply is managed within the organization, and allow the business, and I'll speak about a few key strategic priorities, but how the business started thinking about operational agility and operational resiliency. So it's a very interesting background that has led me to where I am now in terms of looking after some of the key alliances across the region. And I think it all starts with understanding the insurance landscape, right? It's about understanding where this fits into the broader value chain, if you want to call it that. Remember, we spoke about journeys. We spoke about how we're transforming these journeys. Well, it all starts with product design, going right through to claims management. And John mentioned a really important point earlier around moments of truth. I think, Paul, we also spoke about that, around moments of truth. And how critical this is from a reputational perspective to get these moments of truth right. Now, there were examples of where moments of truth at Old Mutual resulted in awful reputational damage in the social platforms, where we couldn't prove deaths, and therefore we couldn't make claim payments, and that resulted in really poor experiences, and the media obviously took a hold of that. So what is really important, and what I want you guys to take away from this slide, is there's applicability of automation across the entire value chain here. What we did at Old Mutual was essentially, deploy 351, I think they're at 451 digital workers now. We deployed it over 92 processes from the time that I left. We realized hundreds of millions of rands of savings. Essentially, and I was trying to convey a stat to get some kind of impact, but in the 4 years that we did deploy these solutions, we saved about 24 million minutes of work. And we did a rough calculation to say, well, what is that in terms of human effort? And that was the equivalent of one person working 24 hours a day for 42 years. And when you put it into those terms, you start to see that idea of cost efficiency that John spoke about. We start to understand, how do businesses create that resiliency? How do they create operational excellence? How do they start thinking about, an improved workforce with a more consistent customer experience? So whilst there's these different, I guess, both horizontals and verticals that we can see application of automation, it all kind of boils down to how do we strategically tie it up to what the business or organization is driving. I'm not going to go into deep kind of detail in each one of these. It's very similar format to what John mentioned, but if I think about operating models and the first tenant, we spoke about unifying the workforce, we spoke about transforming the journeys, we spoke about scaling it enterprise-wide. Now for me, it's less about the technology and it's more about the operating model, right? An organization sets a strategy, it has some key focus areas like I want to defend and grow market share, I want to improve my resilience, I want to refresh my technology offering. How that then cascades into practical KPIs is essentially a target operating model. Your target operating model executes on the organization's strategy. So for me, this technology is around an operating model discussion and how we're reinventing these operating models. I use a very simple question, an analogy almost, and I was fortunate to sit in the excos of a lot of these discussions, and asked the question, what would you do if you had 500 extra workers? And each line of business, the CTO said, well, look, from my service desk perspective, most of my time is being taken up by access management, either granting access, revoking passwords, changing passwords. What an onerous activity, right? And there were highly riskier events that were sitting in queues that he was just not getting to. So his answer to that question was, well, I would reorientate my ticketing or my front desk, my IT service desk, to handle these high-risk exceptions or high-risk tickets. And you, automation team, you do all of the access management. You do all the password reset stuff. And so he started thinking about his service model along those lines. If I think about the human capital team, and sorry for the repetition, Paul, but she spoke about how she would think about onboarding of advisors and brokers in a completely different way, where we completely reinvented the process of screening applicants and then also monitoring the success or efficacy and retention of those candidates after training. So she rethought about her entire service model in the human capital space. then most importantly, and I think where there's the biggest bang for buck, is the servicing environment. It's where all the volumes are, it's where all the complexities are, and we speak about back office, middle office, and front office. Really, in that servicing environment, it would be about how do I improve my customer touch points? How can I then focus on my time as an employee to have more relationship building conversations? How can I, create a hyper-personalized, authentic experience with the customer? And I don't need to be a product expert. I don't need to know all the systems and the processes, because I know I have digital workers that is supporting me in this discussion. So for me, it becomes around this operating model of the future and how this technology set supports this operating model. I think the omnichannel experience or omnichannel enablement is pretty much echoes, I guess, what John mentioned in the financial services piece. But here, what we're starting to see is I need to offer a consistent back office experience that is lean and efficient before I can enable other channels, right? I can't enable self-service if I have a highly manual back office process. All I'm going to do is just create backlogs in the back office and create an even worse experience. So for us, what we started doing at Old Mutual was really optimizing and making the back office processes as efficient as possible. And the business and the chief data officer started realizing, well, now that my back office processes are so lean, I can start thinking about self-service. I can start opening this up to USSD, where customers experience or expect immediate, instant gratification almost. So that omni-channel enablement is an important piece of automation, and I think it's a key enabler to that. If I move over to the smart workforce idea, we always speak about humans wanting to do value-adding work, humans wanting to be creative, wanting to have richer engagements. And I think it's in line with this concept of sunset and sunrise competencies. If back then when there were horses, if someone asked you, what would you ask for? People would ask for faster horses, but instead they made cars, right? And now that reinvented the entire industry. It made new jobs relevant. It made new skill sets relevant. And I think it's incumbent on us as leaders, as technology owners, to essentially upskill what these sunrise competencies would be. And for me, I was able to take engineers and put them into a financial services environment and essentially invent their whole career, reinvent their career. And it's about equipping them with these sunrise competencies that is able for them to have richer customer engagements, gives them new opportunities. And I think it is about creating a smarter workforce rather than replacing or creating redundancies. The next topic around frictionless insurance operational excellence is coupled with operational resilience. And for me, it's about making an organization operationally agile. What that means is that our time to deliver value was unbelievably faster than a conventional solution delivery team. I think you saw one of those stats from one of the leading South African banks that it was a risk and compliance kind of theme, and they were able to deploy a solution in 2 days. Now that ability to deliver a solution in that short space of a time is a huge differentiator to conventional IT programs that are often over budget, they overrun in time and delivery. We were able to be really operationally agile and respond to these changing forces, external forces, internal forces, and deliver solutions that kind of kept us very agile, kept us very relevant, and allowed the business to constantly, think about new customer segments they could penetrate, think about new revenue streams that they could penetrate, all whilst, maintaining an effective turnaround time for key moments of truth. Again, a key kind of aspect of how we think of these things. We looked at customer satisfaction. We looked at, am I able to process the transaction on the same day? How quick am I processing these transactions? And all of it lended itself to operational excellence. I'm going to show you guys a real practical example that kind of highlights that just in a few slides. The last aspect of building cognitive competency, yes, it's coupled with these sunrise competencies that I mentioned, but earlier, if you recall, John mentioned there's all these cognitive capabilities now. There's, Amazon SageMaker, there's computer vision from Microsoft, there's, GCP's offerings from a natural language processing perspective with BERT and Alberta and all these language models that they're introducing. What this allows you to do is create a multi-skilled digital workforce that is completely agnostic to applications. It's completely agnostic to processes, provided you build them in the right way. And just a clear example of that is, you know, and I think I was explaining to some gentlemen earlier in the break, what it's allowed my insurer or the previous employer to do was think about a multi-skilled workforce in a very unique way. As an example, from 6 to 12, we would run debit order reversals. From 12 to 6, we would run claims, because that's when kind of close of business hours. From 6 to 12, from 6 to midnight, we would run data remediation for a different part of the business. This is one digital worker that is doing 3 different processes at different times in the day. Now, if you think about that being resilient, if you think about being multi-skilled, it allows you to build those cognitive competencies in allowing operational resiliency and agility, you know, creating new opportunities and new skill sets for people, enabling other channels, and then also really forcing you to rethink your operating model. I'm going to quickly skip over this slide because I think it's where there's the focus areas. Again, to John's point, if you want to start with insurance, start here. And we've tried to be quite clear in you know, where, according to those strategic priorities, you should be focusing. And we will distribute some of this material post the discussion. But I wanted to really get onto the next piece, because I know I'm quickly running out of time. And this really highlights the power of the solution and the power of the platform. I thought I'd highlight a key use case that we started off with at Old Mutual, where essentially a customer was asking for money from their investment product. It's a common use case. Now, they could ask of this transaction through various channels. At that time, when we automated it, it was through the branch, it was through the contact center, or it was through their broker via email. We didn't have any mobile offerings, we didn't have any USSD, we didn't have any chatbots. It was just those 3 conventional, traditional channels. Now, the challenges in the business were, it was a moment of truth, right? So when a customer wants their money, it has massive reputational impact. We better make this the best experience possible. We had ridiculous backlogs a day. It was an understaffed team that resulted in backlogs that resulted in SLAs of over 15 days, so SLA breaches. Because of the complexity of the products and the systems and the segmentation of the business, it almost meant an individual, both in the front office and in the back office, had to know this complex product, had to know all of the systems and the processes, which was really unrealistic. Again, back to the point, it was paper-based. You know, we asked, can you give me your ID? Can you give me your bank statement? 3 months bank statement. And it became quite an onerous process. The existing workforce was load balanced across many different transactions. I'm sure it's common in your businesses as well. One of the key opportunities that were being missed because of the backlogs, because of the long cycle times, was a retention opportunity, right? Why is a customer asking for their money? We didn't get a chance to ask that question, right? Because we were under so much pressure to pay out these transactions quick enough, we didn't get a chance to ask, well, do you remember what your original investment goal was? Well, now it's maybe around what is a retention opportunity? There were multiple write-offs, human error that resulted in, you know, high error rates and like I said, write-offs. They were exceeding operational costs due to overtime. There was no real fraud checking that was taking place. You know, people weren't checking the forensics database. They weren't checking their bank validations. It was done pretty much at a sample. And we had to deal with a few different channels. So what we deployed really was an automated solution, and I hope it works, yeah. And what we did was automate the back office process. And what you're seeing on the kind of video there is a transaction that's captured in the branch that then drops into a robot queue, a digital worker queue. The digital worker locks that case to itself. You can see there. It goes into a third-party application to validate bank details. It checks whether this transaction is on the red flag list. So is the bank details on the red flag list or forensics database? Is this person on the forensics database? Once it checks all of those things, it goes into the mainframe, and I'm sure this is quite a common screen in insurers, right? It's antiquated legacy platform built in the 70s, written in COBOL, with minimal IP in the business, and we are interfaced with it, and we interface with it much like humans would, so you see it enter its credentials. The digital worker gets credentials like a human would, password and username, and it accesses it in the same way and navigates it across the different dialogues to fulfill the transaction, dispersing to different bank account, from different funds into the bank account, going back into the workflow, updating the workflow, communicating with the customer, and then waiting for the next transaction. And that was pretty much the speed with which these automations work. Now, we took a process that essentially was 15 days from the time of someone submitting it down to 4 to 5 days. Now you think about, and the 4 to 5 days was purely for a pricing and a bank disbursement run, something that was out of our control. Now you think about what that experience has versus a competitor, and within this we built retention opportunities, right? So now we were saying, well, if the case or if the transaction's above 100,000 Rand, this is a retention opportunity. Send it off to a retention team because we need to remind the customer what their original investment decision was. Maybe you can offer a loan instead of withdrawing from your investment products because there's tax implications. It allowed those conversations to happen. So we didn't just strip out, bottom line inefficiencies. We also added to top line growth by retaining customers. And I think, using this process as our starting process, we essentially achieved a world-class net promoter score for this. It kind of differentiated us across all of our competitors and really got us a lot of support in the business that then allowed us to go into the IT teams, human capital teams, the audit teams, the compliance teams, and really kind of scale these digital workforces. So I just wanted to make everything that we've been discussing this morning quite real and quite practical for us by means of a real example. It was all obfuscated, so I don't think that you could see any client information. But just highlighting that, John mentioned our core competency is banking, financial services, and insurance. The scalability of the product, the security posture of the product, and the fact that it is enterprise grade has resulted in quite a few insurers, quite a few of the largest insurers around the world actually using this platform. And certainly for me, from an Old Mutual perspective, coming into this Ss&C Blue Prism environment, I'm really seeing, insurance and financial services being a key sector for us to focus on, and hopefully what we shared this morning helps in kind of supporting how you think about insurance, how you think about financial services, but most importantly, how you think about this target operating model that is underpinned by our technology offerings. So I think, that's it for the morning session. I'm gonna allow some time just for questions because I can see that there's already session 2 that's come in, and we did start a bit late this morning. So if there are any questions, we will share some of this material, right guys? We'll kind of condense it and distribute it with the people that have attended. We are also recording and streaming live. But if there are any questions, guys, please, technical, non-technical, happy to try and answer them, or at least pass it and refer it on to someone who can. But thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for coming, actually. Yeah. Oh, we will be available for questions as well. So.
Hello. My name is Burton Chahar. I'm the founder of DKBS. So our role in this whole thing is to help you as customers. Our job is to make sure that you get some help since from the initial assessment of what exactly it is that you want to do with an RPA solution. We can help you do the initial project chartering and scoping, like show you what are the different processes for you to be able to implement a successful project. So as a solution integrator, Blue Prism is one of our partners. We do have other partners in other solutions like document management, BPM, digital signature. So what we do, we find the best product and we build a solution for our customers. So like in the Blue Prism application, we can help you guys integrate it with a document management system or a digital signature platform. So for those who have my card, do not hesitate to contact us anytime, because sometimes we have a lot of requests, but we found that the customers sometimes struggle with where to start with these RPA solutions. What are the processes to identify it? How do we start? What are the processes that can add value to our company? Our job as DKBS is to help you guys through the initial process. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Okay? We are here to help. We are here to help you put a bid document together, because one of the challenging things is, how do you write the correct bid document that you send to vendors out there to provide you with the right RPA solutions? Like the big utility companies in Cote d'Ivoire, they just got a bid document out. We couldn't help them because it's just a whole bunch of copy and paste. So we send them a list of questions to be able to assess what exactly they want to do. We couldn't get any reply. So we said, unfortunately, we can't help you guys if you cannot provide us with those answers to the questions. So part of our job is also to help you during that process, how to write a right bid document that has all the international compliances in terms of functionalities, in terms of technology, so that when you get your bid document out there, you're sure that you will be getting the right solutions. So that's what I wanted to add. As a system integrator, DKBS is your partner. We have an office here in Ghana. We have another one in Cote d'Ivoire. I run the US company branch through Atlanta. We have another one in Nigeria, Kenya, and Togo. So do not hesitate. We are here to help. So if you have any questions today or tomorrow or the day after, you have my business card, you have my numbers, you can go ahead and send us a message. And we try to get you to this journey together and make sure that you implement a successful RPA project. Thank you. If you have any question, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And my question goes to Kushil, right? Yes. All right. So from the presentation you did and the video that was actually playing, I get the understanding that the solution doesn't come out of the box. So sometimes you would have to connect it to other third-party applications for you to actually get the solution. So how does it work, right? Let me give a typical example. In your narrative, you mentioned that one CEO, the headache was like most of the staff are back down to, doing password reset and all that. So can you walk me through how the connection from Blue Prism platform to that to enable that capability? Thank you.
That's a good question, and I think this is also one of the key attributes of process automation. We always say that it's process agnostic, application agnostic. So it doesn't matter what application is underlying the process, we can interface with it. Now, interfacing is the operative word here, and there's two mechanisms that we can use to do this. Firstly, there's a mechanism of interfacing it just the same way a users would interface the system. So if Kushil is a new employee, I get my credentials, my username and my password, and I go and access the system, and I'm allowed certain privileges based on my role to do my job. So if I'm sitting as the service desk, IT service desk help, I'm allowed to do X, Y, Z, and therefore I get access to X, Y, Z. And this is my credentials to access that system. A digital worker is exactly the same. It's not a named user account, it's probably a service account that is governing the digital worker. But the digital worker, which is essentially just a runtime resource, essentially, a virtual machine, has the access required the same way a user would have. it gets, and we called ours, we created RB codes for ours. So ours was RB007 or RB001. And that was his username, and it got its credentials, which it stored securely in our credential manager, which is a hashed secure environment. And so it gets exactly the same access that it needs to the dialogues, to the screens, to do that job. So that's how it interfaces with the underlying applications, whatever it is. Another mechanism, and this is leveraging our digital exchange, where it's essentially best of breed partners that we're trying to bring together. One of them is a service desk ticketing mechanism like ServiceNow or Sherwell, or I think you get quite a few others. And we've built direct API integrations into that. So instead of going through the front end and the UI, like I just explained, you could download the API or the connector from our digital exchange, build it into your automations, and you essentially can access the application like that. So there's different ways. John, did I get that right? Yeah, there's different ways. That's how we did it at Old Mutual. It's just it's like a new employee that you onboard. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Cool. Do you have any other questions? Oh, you have mic. Oh.
In terms of deployment, right? I heard of you don't sell license, and how is it done?
So there's different deployment options, and John, maybe I can ask for some of your help here in responding to this, but it can be deployed on-prem, software as a service. You could buy your own enterprise license and host it in your own tenant or on your own servers and within your own network perimeter. Different aspects of our product offering, our portfolio has different pricing options, but I need to ask John for his assistance in terms of the pricing and the licensing. Yeah.
Okay, just to expand on that, yeah, so three options you've got. You've got an on-prem option, you've got a use your own cloud option, which is essentially on-prem but in your own cloud, and then you've also got a different option to use our own cloud, so that's Blue Prism, software as a service. The first two options on-prem, what you buy is you do not need to buy things like dev environments, test environments, right? You buy what we call a concurrent runtime license, which means if you're running two processes concurrently, you need two licenses from us, okay? If you try and run a third process, it will say, I haven't got enough licenses. So the idea behind our on-prem and infrastructure as a server licensing is that you need to essentially get as many processes as you can to make the most optimum use of one license. In other words, 24/7, 100% utilization is the way forward before you buy a next license. But what you'll find is that you'll have peaks and troughs in the day of your requirement for concurrent runtimes. And that's the point where you say, oh, that's 10, so I need to buy 10 licenses. Sometimes we call those digital workers as well. Old Mutual was how many? 450. 451, right? So that's the scale it can get to. So that's for the first two options. The third option, Blue Prism as a service, is you buying essentially a managed platform for you. So it's either on Azure or on AWS, but we run the hardware, we run the operating system, we run the Blue Prism, we run the dev and the production environments, and so you're just buying the complete service, which means all of the software in there, including some Microsoft cognitive capabilities, scanning capabilities in there as well, SMS capabilities, a load of other things. And so you buy that as a service, although it's really more of a managed platform than a Blue Prism managed service, because you yourself continue to build the objects and to build the processes. And for that, you need access from the cloud, Azure or AWS, using a VPN, site-to-site VPN, to the systems that you're trying to access. Because remember, to your first question, you need access to the capability to drive that UI, be that an SAP UI, a Siebel, whatever, Salesforce, PeopleSoft, whatever. That's what you need to get access to through this site-to-site VPN. Make sense?
John, just one question, but do we help in that process to design that?
Yes, so as part of the onboarding for Blue Prism Cloud, that's that third option, software as a service, we have essentially the way that you actually order from us is that there is quite a detailed design service that comes part of that, so that we then help you design the kind of configuration of how to get your VPN from site to site working. I mean, we've done it in so many different places now. Let's face it, over the next, as I mentioned in my presentations, over the next 10 years, we're all going to be consuming over the cloud. So it's a matter of when and not if.
From a partnership point of view, obviously with DKBS, as with most of our partners, we support them 100%. We don't allow them, we don't want them to be on their own in the regions. We're not here just to sell technology. We're here to help our partners grow, because if they grow, we grow. And I know Mr. Dijaha has got a lot of plans here for the whole of West Africa regarding how they grow out. And I think just understand that we will help you through people like John and Kushil kick that project off. All you really need is a blank piece of paper. With that blank piece of paper, we bring people in, we work with DKBS, we start doing some initial designs. Through questioning, you can fill in the forms. And from there on, we help to build that return on investment. Because whether you buy one license or whether you buy 100 licenses, there has to be a return on that investment. You're not going to get the budget signed off for an RPA project from your C-suite unless you have a good business case. I'm sure that what you've heard today, some people probably understand it better than others, but I think what we found, and Burton mentioned some examples recently of clients that have come to us and said, I have an RFP. Will you please complete this RFP? And we try our best, and we have a number of RFPs now emerging out of other African countries. We have a call tomorrow from a large project in Uganda, because they've heard of how Blue Prism approach projects. But they need to understand that if you don't have the right questions being asked before you put that RFP together, then the RFP makes no sense. All right, fortunately the one in Uganda, I think, have taken a slightly different approach. They want to understand initially how DKBS and Blue Prism can help them get to that operating model. So the first phase will be a little bit easier for us to actually respond to, because we can actually explain and put consulting hours to that. And then they will go to take that information from that design, and then they'll come out with a second RFP on a solution. Because that initial award, and we hope we will win that, and I think we're quite well favored for that, will help them design that whole model. So to anybody else then, obviously we would hopefully win the second phase as well, but by having that operating model and that process map already designed, even if it's your first entry into RPA, will help them select a vendor from a technology point of view. Because the technology, not only on a price level, but on a functionality level, would then have to meet the scope of that project. I mean, the tenders that we get now, RFPs we get now, some are very good because they've gone through quite an extensive phase with perhaps a large global system integrator. But most of the ones we get are, what does your technology do? Provide me a price for 10 licenses. Well, 10 licenses for what? So just understand that, we've got some really strong people in the company. DKBS are growing that expertise out to service the whole of African continent with us. So don't be afraid to, as I said earlier when I started my speech, don't be afraid to ask the basic question. Where do I start? Let us help you. It's not always free. Sometimes it's free, sometimes it's not free. But I think if you're building out a business case to justify significant returns. You know, speed, accuracy, performance. That business case is very important. So hopefully today was interesting. Thank you for all the guys for presenting. I know it was a long session, and we've got another long session this afternoon now, but please just think about it. I know the guys from DKBS, Burton's team, will be following up with you just for any questions. I'll be back in the region myself, you know, in 3 or 4 weeks' time. Happy to meet you then and have further discussions. You know, these things don't happen overnight. You know, they take, as Kashil said, 3 years to get to, all right, a very large project, but I would say that Old Mutual are now using it across most of the business, yes? So you look at the digital worker as just an additional worker, but he's probably doing the work of 4 or 5 workers, where you might have to increase your labor force to do the work of 1 digital worker. So from a growth expansion, you can do more work with less. Anyway, thanks for coming. Nice to see you all, and hopefully we'll meet again in the near future. Thank you very much.
Today, work means doing many different tasks, reading emails, creating spreadsheets, and even using that irreplaceable 20-year-old program. It's a lot of work, and not all of it uses the skills that make us, well, human, like creativity, critical thinking, and communication. So why not automate those repetitive tasks and focus instead on the high-value, great work we're meant to do? At Blue Prism, we're making automation smarter through the use of our digital workforce. That means you don't need to change the systems you're already using or worry about integrating with the new program IT recently adopted. A Blue Prism digital workforce can handle it all. In building automations, that's easy. There's no coding required. As a business user, you just drag, drop, and build flowcharts. The best part? It's all centrally managed, so your business teams can seamlessly collaborate, share automations, and build on each other's work. And the digital workers can help each other out when they see that their virtual colleagues are busy on other tasks. And IT can be sure it's governed, safe, secure, and ready to scale. Each side of the operation focusing on what they do best. Let's look at a simple example. Every business needs to fulfill customer orders. With Blue Prism, this task, including all the clicks, logins, and decisions, can be completely automated and in turn transformed. Digital workers can read the incoming orders, use your internal inventory system, check in with human teammates if needed, and of course, use SAP to finalize the order, Salesforce to update customer information, and Outlook to send order confirmation emails. Teaming up with a digital workforce that can handle these tasks puts you on the fastest path to value and gives your people back the time they need to do what only they can. Deliver outstanding customer service, build relationships, be creative, and tap into the best practices to grow the business. The world's largest organizations choose Blue Prism so they can explore new possibilities and do more great work. What will you automate?
Running a business isn't easy, but with automation, it can be made much simpler. With Blue Prism, intelligent automation is just a click away for your entire organization. As the operating system for business, Blue Prism is transforming the way you work, seamlessly mixing human and digital workers and freeing people from mundane tasks. From recording workflows and generating process definition documents with Blue Prism Capture to discovering new automated opportunities that weren't previously thought possible. you can put the power of automation into the hands of your people with no technical experience required. Blue Prism's digital workers harness leading AI and machine learning technologies using optical character recognition and NLP to process complex, unstructured information. And with Blue Prism Digital Exchange, you can even drag and drop pre-built automations to save your workforce hundreds of thousands of hours in just a few clicks. Business leaders can then monitor the entire process from a central command center, scheduling, resourcing, and even reimagining ways of operating. All of this for just one single license cost. Deployed on-premise, software as a service, or in the cloud of your choice, giving you the greatest possible return on your automation investment.
Know your customer, also known as KYC, is the mandatory process of verifying the identity of customers and clients. With regulation constantly changing, banking and financial service enterprises must expand their KYC workforce and often lengthen the onboarding process for new clients. This makes KYC a costly program, one that 10% of the largest financial institutions spend over $100 million a year on. That is until now. Blue Prism's connected RPA digital workforce is streamlining the KYC process, empowering compliance teams, and delivering immediate value to the customer. How is this accomplished? Client documents are scanned and sent to Blue Prism's digital workforce. The digital worker uses intelligent skills such as optical character recognition and natural language processing to read and classify each document and extract the necessary information. Analyzing the data, the Blue Prism digital worker will ensure that all information is valid and, if necessary, alert banking staff to missing or incomplete information. The entire process is logged, and the information is organized and stored to be compliant with KYC, as well as anti-money laundering and GDPR regulations. This is high-value work that frees banking staff from manual entry and ensures continuous, up-to-date, enterprise-wide compliance standards are followed. But Blue Prism goes beyond just delivering cost savings across the business. It accelerates enterprise-wide innovation. Blue Prism's connected RPA is empowering the internal entrepreneurs, the in-house change makers, to use new technologies in innovative ways, like tailored financial products, intelligent contract reading, and responsive chatbot services. This is the Connected Entrepreneur Enterprise. Across all industries, the digital workforce is digitizing physical information from any form and any language into organized, usable data. Business teams are connecting that data and machine learning technology to drive innovation and stay ahead of the competition, far into the future. Welcome to Blue Prism's Connected RPA, intelligent automation done right.
Imagine that you call into a contact center and you have an amazing customer experience. You're able to provide the information to the IVR. The agent is able to easily see that information and has all the information at her fingertips to quickly resolve that issue. So that's what we're going to show you today. Using the Service Assist 360-degree view, John Smith is going to call into that IVR with an inquiry around a bill. You're going to see the information that he provides flow directly to the agent desktop. That agent is going to have one view with all the information that she needs to quickly resolve the issue. So the first thing you're going to see is John calling into the IVR. Now, this is a simulator, but it can be any IVR solution, whether it's Avaya, Genesis, or any other solution that the customer prefers. Provide his phone number. So what's going to happen is in the background, the IVR is going to go out and find that information or connect with the CTI to do that. The next thing that is going to happen is that he's going to be presented with a menu of options. He will go in and put in his information and select the billing inquiry. As soon as he hits the pound sign, our digital workers are going to be automatically triggered and start finding information. So John presses the pound sign, and you can see our digital workforce is out running, finding the information. If you look here on the left, you're going to see where it says 4 of 8, 8 of 8. So what is happening is our digital workers are swarming. They're running in parallel, hitting all of the systems and the business processes that are needed to resolve John's inquiry. Let me orient you to what you're seeing here. This is the user experience that's provided as part of the Service Assist user interface. However, we can work with any Agent Unified desktop of choice, whether it's Salesforce, ServiceNow, AWS Connect, or even a homegrown solution. So an agent's able to go into their agent desktop in a seamless experience and access the information and the business processes that they need to resolve the request. Across the top, you're able to see the tabs and the business process and functions that our agent has access to. Just like any other solution out there, it is a role-based processes and the information that she needs to. Across the left, you're able to see all the tasks that the agent needs to resolve, including the one that just came in. So let's click on that. What you see here is a dynamic form that was delivered to her based on the information needed to resolve this request. If this were a loan approval or life insurance claim or some other request, different information would have been brought in with different access. In addition, as we look down the screen, we're able to see not only information around their details, but things like product, insurance policies, and even that customer history. All of this is information that in the past, the agent would have had to go into multiple systems or might not have even had access at all to be able to resolve this request. In addition, you're able to see things like offers. So if this is a revenue center, the information that our agent is needed to do some upsell and cross-sell is provided. So notice immediately our agent is provided with the information that John needs. There's a suspicious payment, and she's able to go and provide some information. Now, a couple things that are also happening here. Not only is it bringing in information, our agent is able to interact with that entire journey. So if there's other information that needs to be brought in, so for example, if our agent needs to see some more details in order to resolve that, she simply clicks on that button and our digital workers are running in the background to find that additional information, which you see up here. In addition, it's not just kind of that inbound information in that 360-degree view. She also has the ability to go and change information, and our digital workforce will then go and update the information in those external systems. So 360-degree view, interactive, with all the information that she needs to complete that inquiry quickly, as well as the ability to interact across the entire journey. And something else to keep in mind is that it doesn't matter, this might have come in through the IVR, but whether it's coming in through the IVR or through chat or through just another channel, it's going to be a consistent view with consistent access to the information along the way. So when we walked through this, you're able to see that our agent was very quickly able to resolve John's inquiry, tell him that there was a problem with the bill. You saw all of that data flow coming across all of the channels, whether it was IVR or other, and reaching out to those external systems using our swarming capability. And overall, it was a great customer experience for John. And then for our agent, she was able to focus on John. She was able to focus on him, give him the information, and upsell and cross-sell where needed. Manual repetitive tasks, her having to swivel chair and going and finding information in multiple places was now eliminated, which ultimately is going to lead to a lower handle time and faster call resolution. And ultimately, if you look across all of the customer journey and all of the customer journeys our agent interacts with, it's going to reduce that cost to serve and cost to sell and drive a really great value to both the customer and the agent.
Businesses need a way to automate repetitive tasks where employees must be at their desk and use their own credentials. With Blue Prism Desktop, customers can create attended automations where human interaction is always required. Tasks must be initiated by a human worker, and where automations use applications that can only be used on a specific user's desktop with their specific logins. Business users are empowered to do just that through a simple user interface which is easy to use with no upskilling and minimum training needed. Desktop enables users to run processes where speed and accuracy are vital and where customer sensitive data is handled, such as onboarding a new employee, mortgage, or loan applications. Such processes often involve multi-factor authentication. Desktop allows all of this from the user's computer using their own secure credentials. This demonstration shows how desktop will look to the end user, focusing on the intuitive, easy-to-use interface and the simple user experience they will have. Although a desktop process can request input from the user on multiple occasions while being run, this demonstration shows a simple process to onboard a new employee to an HR system. This enables us to demonstrate the core desktop functionality available to the end user in version 1. Please note that for demo purposes, some of the recording has been slowed down so that the interactions with the systems can be seen clearly. This is not an indication of the real process speed, which is quicker in real time. As the user opens desktop, they will see a list of folders which contain processes. These are the processes which they can run and which they have been granted specific access to. This access can be set to be as granular as the automation team COE team wishes using Blue Prism Enterprise multi-teams environment. Desktop users can run an automation process as and when they need to. The desktop user cannot edit or delete any of the processes they have access to. They can only run those processes. The processes are arranged in folders, again designed by the automation team. Here you can see there are 5 example folders containing processes. The user will click on a folder, here clicking on the folder named BPD. This will open the folder and show any processes the folder contains. Here you will see that there are 3 processes within the selected folder. If the user wishes to return to the list of folders at any time, they can do this by clicking on the Library tab. To select a process to run, they will again open the folder and then select the required process, which in this case is the Onboard New User process. This process has been designed to onboard a new employee onto an HR system and to request the desktop user to add information into the fields within a simple form. The fields and information requested is all determined at process design time. When the information has been added, the user will click on Run. The demo has been slowed down so that you can see the interaction with the back-end HR system. For this demo, we are showing an example of a process being run by the logged-in desktop user for the very first time. The process has been designed to first check if the application login credentials are already available in the Windows Credential Manager. If not, the process will ask the user to enter their individual credentials for the HR system. Once the user has entered these, the process will store the credentials locally and continue to run. However, the next time the process runs, the user will not need to enter them again. Instead, the process will use the credentials from the user's personal credential store. You now see those credentials being used by the process to log into the HR system and the new employee details being added according to the information input earlier. In this example, the process has been designed to display the information back to the desktop user. After reviewing the information, the user clicks Submit and a success message is displayed. Earlier, you saw the desktop user adding their individual credentials to the HR system. Here, we will run the same process again. Now the process will run and take those credentials stored locally and seamlessly log into the HR system. Another new employee will be added and the process will not ask for any credentials. Processes can be designed with required validation, so here is an example of a process to offboard an employee from the same HR system. The required process is selected and the information of the employee who is leaving will be added. Here you will see that an employee where the information provided is not found in the system. In this example, the national insurance number entered is not recognized as valid, so a message is displayed unable to find user with the provided information, followed by a message to confirm that the process has not been completed. The desktop user can click on View Issues to see further details. Here you can see that the process didn't run successfully as the national insurance number entered could not be found. Returning to the process library, we will now look at the History tab. Here you can see the session history of the processes which have been completed and those which have not been completed. To view more details, click on View Parameters to see the information that was entered into the form, or View Issues to see further details. Back to the process library, and we will now look at credentials. This user currently has one credential stored in desktop, the credential for the HR system you saw earlier. Please note that after this was entered into desktop, it was also automatically added to the desktop user's own local Windows Credential Manager. The desktop user can also add a new credential in desktop manually, as you see here. The user now has two credentials stored for use in desktop. Finally, we will now look at Windows Credential Manager for the logged in user. The new credential, which has just been added via desktop, is now shown. Blue Prism Desktop delivers centralized control, security, scalability, and auditability. The ability to provide attended automation while allowing our customers to retain control of their automations.
Today I'd like to take you through Blue Prism Process Intelligence and how it fits into the Blue Prism platform as a whole. We believe there are three core areas within a process's lifecycle for automation where mining has a significant benefit: process discovery, process design, and process monitoring. We'll start with discovery. Blue Prism Process Intelligence first uses process mining to provide a high-level view of your business processes. The first challenge to getting visibility into your processes is getting the data from all the relevant data sources. Often this is pulled directly from the system logs, but sometimes this involves experts using an ETL tool to transform the data as needed for analysis. Blue Prism Process Intelligence has these transformation capabilities built in an easy-to-use graphical form, which saves time and money by eliminating the need for an external tool and the experts to use it. Unlike a data warehouse or traditional BI tool, once the data is ingested, it is automatically organized as a process model that can be visualized and analyzed. Here we see the process flow across all components in a distributed application. The diagram is annotated with metrics of how many use cases, or instances, follow each path and how long each step takes, allowing us to drill down into the bottlenecks. Many other tools are provided to answer additional questions, such as which steps are taking the longest or cost the most, or to find the root cause of delays, which helps identify automation opportunities. Process queries, or behaviors, can be defined graphically without any coding or scripting, democratizing their use. In this example behavior, we're looking for cases where a rental car was issued, no coverage confirmation had been done before that, the claim was denied, and it took more than 4 days before the rental was returned. While this might seem very specific, these behaviors can be used as filters, allowing you to analyze just the cases of interest. To get the full picture and better understand automation opportunities, we also need to be able to visualize and analyze the manual steps a user does on their computer that don't generate data or logs. This is referred to as task mining, and it provides the granular detail required to build out automations and PDDs. Here we see the recording surface that manages the recordings and generated log files. Blue Prism Process Intelligence deploys multiple recorders on various users' desktops, so we can capture a representative sample of how different people do tasks. This means that we don't just see one happy path, but every path, including exception paths, resulting in automations that are much more resilient. In task mining, protecting user privacy is critical. Templates allow us to define when to record, what to record, and what content should be hidden to protect user data privacy. Users can also have the option to pause recording. Once user activities are recorded into log files, Blue Prism Process Intelligence provides tools to automatically find the significant tasks in the low-level clicking and typing events, separating out unrelated events such as multitasking. Users can also manually define tasks by looking at logs with screenshots and designating start and end steps. Once tasks are cut from log files, you're shown what tasks are defined, along with metrics such as how many times each task was done, how much time is spent on each, and a measure of the complexity that helps identify how hard each task will be to automate. The chart at the bottom displays each task, showing the potential time savings and the complexity of each to help make it clear which are the best candidates for automation. You can also use the Blue Prism Process Assessment tool to help here. When you discover a task that you want to automate, you can then go to a display that shows all of the ways this task can be accomplished. You then just select the ones you'd like to use for building out your automation, and click the Export Blue Prism button in the top right. Now that we've discovered the process we want to automate, we can move on to the design phase. We can use the JSON file we just exported from Blue Prism Process Intelligence to generate a skeleton of that automation within the Blue Prism Studio. This will reduce our automation build time by up to 30%. Okay, but how do we actually get that into the Blue Prism platform itself? Once you're in Blue Prism Capture, click Open, Open File, and select the JSON file you just exported from Blue Prism Process Intelligence. We can then open that and bring it into the main platform. And you'll be able to see all those pieces in here. Now this is going to save a ton of time for your developers by having that PDD digitized. Whenever you have recording agents installed on users' desktops, privacy and compliance are obviously going to be major concerns. And as was mentioned earlier, this is taken care of. So when I open this up and you see the screenshot, you'll notice that this is entirely blurred. This is to make sure you keep your compliance. You'll notice that even though this is blurred, the exact location that a user needs to click is highlighted. In fact, if I was to add an additional step, I could highlight that as well to make sure that all the granular details are very easy for a reviewer to see and understand. This is to make sure that we're saving the time of any SMEs that are reviewing this content. The real power that comes from process intelligence comes from the ability to look at many different recordings and put them all together to find all the different paths. Now, we know that the way a digital worker does something and the way a human worker does something shouldn't always be the same. Obviously, they work in different ways, so we're going to want to make some adjustments. Once we bring these models of what the people are doing into Capture, we can look at the entire process end to end and be able to easily optimize it for a digital worker to use. Once your process is optimized and ready, it's time to move it on to the next stage of the Blue Prism platform. To do that, you're going to click Export in the top right, fill out some basic information, select Blue Prism Release, and hit Export. This is going to give you that unparalleled speed to value. If we take option A as discussed earlier, we can easily import this release into the Blue Prism Studio. All we have to do is select that file and hit Import, and we'll see it pop up. If we open this, you can see that even very complex solutions can be brought into the studio with relative ease. This can save up to 30% of your development time, drastically speeding up how quickly you can get automations into production. You could also take option B and get to the studio through Automation Lifecycle Management and Wireframer. This will impose best practices, helping your processes be more resilient. Once the automation is built, it's time to focus on the delivery aspect, and this is where the monitoring capabilities of Blue Prism Process Intelligence come into play. In order to monitor both the digital workers and the larger processes they're a part of, we can use the Blue Prism Process Intelligence behavior filters we saw earlier. In addition to analyzing cases of interest, these behaviors can also be used to trigger alerts whenever such a behavior is detected. We can also call a service, such as a digital worker, when a behavior is seen. This provides monitoring and closed-loop control over an end-to-end distributed process. We don't even have to wait for an event to happen. Blue Prism Process Intelligence can use the process data collected so far to predict outcomes and SLA violations before they occur and fire an alert to notify and when such an event becomes likely, before the situation becomes a problem. For example, if an SLA isn't going to be met, Blue Prism Process Intelligence can dynamically assign additional digital workers to the task to get the work done quicker. Blue Prism Process Intelligence adds powerful tools to the discover, design, and deliver phases of the automation lifecycle, resulting in a complete intelligent automation platform. This greatly accelerates your ability to build enterprise-scale automations, furthering your digital transformation journey.
Automation is about speed, so designing a process automation shouldn't slow you down. Picture this. You've got a healthy pipeline of processes waiting to be automated, but your analysts and developers are inundated. They're busy designing and building other automations while losing time learning the as-is process from process owners. You need a solution, and fast. What if process owners were empowered to define their process? I'll now hand you over to my colleague Lou.
Thanks, Annabelle. Welcome to the world of Blue Prism Capture. Through Capture, anyone in your organization can meaningfully contribute to your automation program because anyone can record a process. It can be done accurately and without any hand-holding from process analysts. Rather than defining the process, optimizing it becomes the focus. Here you see me doing a task while Capture records it all. You can also import models directly from the powerful task finding capabilities in Blue Prism Process Intelligence to see how multiple people do the same task over many instances. And because Capture has auto password censoring, you don't have to worry about compromising security or compliance. You can also manually censor fields as needed for added security. You'll even receive tailored asset recommendations from our digital exchange so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, saving your team time and kickstarting your automation. Capturing all the information relating to a process this way is not only fast and consistent, but also editable. You can refine the process, adding decisions or new recordings, for example, in order to make highly resilient automations. Once you're ready, you can pass it on to your developers through an easy export, drastically speeding up development time. From the process recording, you get an auto-generated process definition document, or PDD. Though creating a PDD normally takes weeks, it now takes less than a day. Developers make it look easy, but building an automation can be complicated, especially if you have to start from scratch each time. With Capture, the auto-generated Blue Prism process template includes process, object, and application modeler data, so your process developers have substantially less to do. Since spying can take a decent amount of time, this will significantly accelerate development, giving even more hours back to the business.
So if you want to reduce your end-to-end automation time by up to 75% and remove the drudgery from the lives of your developers and analysts, visit our website for more information or contact us to speak to a specialist.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric. I coordinate our solutioning efforts here at Ss&C Chorus, and with the help of Elaine and Matt, who are some of our senior sales consultants at Chorus and Blue Prism, we're going to bring a portion of what Colin just introduced to life with the demo. And today's demo scenario, just based on Ss&C's background and client base, we've picked a simple scenario in the wealth management space. So next slide, please. Colin introduced briefly our solution stack, if you will. And for the very first demo, we're going to keep it pretty straightforward, where we're going to talk about some of the acceleration features, specifically the Blue Prism bot that you're going to see take some action in our demonstration, and that bot is fed by some of what Colin described in terms of the AI and ML behind the scenes. But given the recent introduction of UX Builder on some of the last stakeholder meetings, we want to feature that as well, very briefly, because you know it, you've seen it, but it's important for us to present a complete unified package in a demo with all of the tools that we have in place. And all of this will be orchestrated through and in service of an underlying business process running through Chorus. So next slide, we'll put a little business context around what we're going to do. So we have Diana here in the top left-hand corner, and she's thinking about her future, and she wants to start some savings. And as part of that process, she's going to talk to her bank. Her bank is going to transfer some assets. She's got to open a new account in another bank. All sorts of back office work needs to be done in order to set Diana up for her future. She's actually going to apply online. You know, as you know, we talk about omni-channel ingestion. There's lots of ways to kick off a business process, but for today, we're going to feature an app that was built in our UX Builder to enable her to submit some of her credentials in a handwritten form of her application. And that handwritten form gives us an opportunity to leverage our integrated document automation solution, which we're not going to feature today, but it's important for you to remember. It's in there, it's under the hood. It's automatically going to extract all of her information and present it to Elaine, who we're going to repurpose today and put her in our customer onboarding department here. So she may have to validate. She'll show you what that looks like, just in case some of you haven't seen it before. But she's going to get in and check and make sure all the data that is required is there and ready for our digital worker to come in and work some magic. So this part of the demo will go pretty quick. You're going to hear Elaine and Matt reference the hummingbird, which you'll come to know and love. But what that digital worker is going to do is, as Colin indicated, handle a number of tasks that typically have been done by humans, might have taken a little longer, that you're going to see happen, opportunity for some keystroke errors, and a couple of these systems could not be automated at all, given that there's no API to do it. And that's one of those areas that Colin mentioned that Blue Prism digital workers really shine at. So the three things that this worker will do, it's going to open a mainframe database just to validate that we know who Diana is. And it's going to open up a web-based CRM to indicate the fund transfer. And then it's going to open a different web-based portal to reward Diana for opening a new account with the second bank. It's important for you to note that this transaction is initiated automatically through Chorus. Once Elaine hits the continue button, the worker's sitting, waiting, it's going to take the work and get it done. And when the worker is finished, it actually reports back automatically and gives Elaine a confirmation number. Yep, I've done what I need to do. Everything went fine. And here's the confirmation number for you to put on a communication that goes back out to Diana to let her know she's all set and welcome her and applaud her next step on her journey to retirement. So that's the business journey that is going to lay over top of what Elaine and Matt will show. And then once we're done that, we're going to ask Matt to lift the hood and show us a little bit of the Blue Prism command center and how this is all brought to life in that platform. So that's our introduction, and with that, we'll turn screen share over to Elaine and get started.
Thanks, Eric. While I'm trying to share my screen, good morning, good afternoon, and for some of you, good evening. I'm Elaine Avier. I'm one of the solution engineers for Ss&C, but today I'll play different roles. As Eric mentioned, I'll be running the live demo end-to-end with showing you how the information or how Blue Prism connects and transacts within the Chorus BPM platform. Before I formally begin, Eric, can you kindly confirm that you're seeing my screen?
I can see and hear. Yes, Elaine.
Thank you. Wonderful. As soon as we do that,